right, guys, welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Live's 33rd live show, I think. Great.
Woo.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys all with us today. We're here with Mark Moss. Very excited to have this interview. I've got my co-host Q here. Few housekeeping notes before we get started. Bitcoin 2022 conference. It's going to be huge. We're all going to be there. Um, Speaking, running around, come talk to us, come take a picture, hang out, learn about Bitcoin, network. If you're looking to leave your fiat job and find work in the Bitcoin space, there's no better place to do it. So many startups have begun at Bitcoin conferences, and this is the biggest one yet with 35,000 plus people in attendance. Tickets are scarce, but you can get 10% off with promo code YTMAG at checkout. So make sure you go get your tickets today. When you guys buy tickets while we're live on air, we find out, we make it rain sats in the chat. So if you guys want some free Bitcoin back, just go get your conference tickets and we will drop those codes in the chat and on screen. I think we have a short ad read from Q and then we'll get started here.
We do. And then I'm also going to share a story about Mark Moss from Bitcoin 21 that I doubt he remembers, but I do.
Nice.
So if you're interested in exploring the many worlds of Bitcoin with thought leaders from the space, how about meeting Bitcoiners from your city and throughout the US? Maybe you're seeking an exciting new job with a Bitcoin company. What about orange pilling your best friend? This is what Bitcoin Day is all about. Curious Bitcoiners coming together, learning, sharing, and talking Bitcoin all day long. Bitcoin Day events have limited seats, so you don't get lost in the crowd, but rather have meaningful interactions with speakers and participants. Learn about personal and financial sovereignty, security and privacy, mining, the Lightning Network, and many other topics. The next Bitcoin Day will be held in Sacramento on February 19th. So book your tickets at bitcoinday.io today before the event is sold out. Everyone deserves a Bitcoin Day. And also on the topic of Bitcoin conference, as Alex mentioned, it's an awesome networking event. You get to meet some of your favorite thought leaders in the space. Mark, I had the pleasure of coming up to you in line while you were waiting for coffee just to say hello and thank you for the work that you were doing. You helped teach me a ton, and here I am getting to talk to you. So this is pretty awesome, man. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, that's so awesome. Man, the conference is so good. I can't wait to go back. So everybody that's listening, I mean, if you're on the fence, like pull that trigger. I was there in 2019 and San Francisco was pretty cool. But I mean, last year Miami was just insane. And the one thing I would just say about that is, getting to meet all kinds of people, like you, just randomly throughout everywhere. But man, it's like almost like electricity. It's like electricity. Like it's the vibe that's going on is so strong. And really what kind of really made me think about this last year was that, especially more than ever today, and this is a lot of things that I talk about, but more than anything today, we're seeing people trying, the leaders, whoever they are, right? The leaders trying to really divide us on identity politics, right? And so now we supposedly we align on race or sex or gender or preference or whatever it is, but it's wrong. It's not the way the world works. We align on shared values. And so as Bitcoiners at Bitcoin, I think it was 15,000 people last year or whatever it was, 12,000 people, all different races and sexes and genders and whatever it was. We were all there because we aligned on values. And we didn't just align on any values. We aligned on the highest values. And because of that, it was just like this electricity in the air that you could just feel. And it was amazing. And I was like on a high for like a week afterwards. And so anyway, super excited to get back.
I mean, you're not wrong. Everyone who goes there was very much aligned. Everyone wanted the same things. It was a great experience. I mean, I'm sure you were around or in the room when Mallers announced the El Salvador news. I mean, I continue to say that is just one of those moments in my life. I will always remember where I was, who I was sitting next to, and just like the environment and feeling.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit, like what are some of the values about Bitcoin that like really drew you in? Like what are some of those values for yourself?
Well, for me personally, what really drew me in was that I grew up in a very, let's just say, political home. My parents were kind of grassroots political, conservative, South Texas. And even to this day, politics is something that's just discussed around our table. My grandfather was a decorated World War II vet. My father was a Vietnam vet, flew jets. And I was born into, my dad was still in the Air Force at the time when I was born. And so it's just, I just figured I'd go to war one day. That's just how I figured. That was my genealogy, my line. And like I said, we still talk about politics to this day, even with my extended family, and even with my own family. And I would say after 2008, I'm not going to give you my whole story. Most people have probably heard it, but I mean, I made a lot of money and then I lost a lot of money and it sucked really bad. And Mike Tyson's you have a plan to get punched in the face. So I got punched in the face and the gut, and I got kicked in the nuts at the same time. And it made me go like, what the heck is going on? And so, the deeper the pain, like the more motivation you have to go to figure this out. And so I had to go figure out what was going on. I was really good at making money, but I didn't understand this whole financial casino that seemed to have effect over my life. And I had no idea what was going on or control over that. And so it forced me to just dig in. I vowed to myself, my family, this would never happen to me again. I was going to figure this out. And the more that I started learning about the financial system, the more disillusioned I became. I became a gold bug, right? I figured like sound money is the answer. Then after 2012 election, I was just done with politics. Like, there's no way we can affect change. I don't want to be a freedom fighter. I'm a surfer from Southern California. Like, I'll just be on a beach in Nicaragua surfing and fishing, and like, I'm done with this, right? That was kind of my MO. I told my wife, like, we're not connected enough to make it. Like, I'm not in on that club, and so we're out. I don't want to be on the freedom fighter, but I'd been subscribed to a newsletter called Sovereign Man for about a dozen years now at this point. And Sovereign Man was kind of the first guy that really started talking about this Plan B and passports and things like that. And the premise is that, obviously, being a sovereign man, which we talk about that word a lot today, but the premise is that you wouldn't put all your life in one stock, or all your money in one stock. So why do you have all your life in one country? It's a very interesting concept. And after coming in 2008, I was very shaken, very gun shy about the whole banking system and all that. And so I was aggressively working towards setting up multiple banking jurisdictions. And I was literally, in 2015, I had hired an attorney in Panama to set up a bank account in Panama. And I was trying to get money out of the system. And I took another look at Bitcoin and I was like, wait, that's the same thing. I can get my money out of the banking system. So I did. So that's when I bought Bitcoin for the first time. I'd been watching it for a couple of years go up and down. And anyway, took the plunge 2015. But that's when things change. So just like we always see with other people, once you buy a little bit, then you kind of start falling down that rabbit hole. And all of a sudden I realized this is the tool that we need. Like, we actually have a tool to win. This changes everything. And so all that, my life of thinking I would go to war and I wanted to change the world, and then all that disillusion I had on the whole system and just wanted to be checking out, it all came together when I got Bitcoin. I was like, this is it. This is the tool. Now we can actually win. And I got to go tell everybody I know about it and scream it from the mountaintops. And so here I am, 6-7 years later, nationally syndicated radio show, podcast, YouTube, speaking and doing everything I can, just trying to do it. And so it's the tool that we have to win. The values that it has is obviously like self-sovereignty, right? And so once I'm able to control my own property, it changes everything about my life. And so the way that I look at the entire world is just different. Of course, we know this. You start looking at the world through orange colored lenses, right? And so all of a sudden you see solutions to problems, new solutions to problems. It starts with self-sovereignty. It starts with having that long-term perspective. It comes from a place of saving, but then when you get that self-sovereignty, then you have more responsibility, right? And you want more freedom, and you want to level up your life, and you want other people to level up their lives. And so those are the values, I guess. Back to your original question. Sorry for the long answer.
No, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot to unpack. I saw Alex's look of excitement when you brought up the Sovereign newsletter you listened to, or you've been reading. I almost want to ask Alex, do you also subscribe to this newsletter? It feels very in line with some of the things that you talk about.
I don't yet, but I'm going to. That sounds awesome.
The first thing I kind of want to unpack, because Alex and I have gotten into this debate very often on the show about, being all in on something versus not. And you brought up a very interesting concept where, why are we all in on our country? What does it look like to not be all in on the country you're in? Does that mean owning property elsewhere? Does it mean having a citizenship elsewhere? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it means all that, right? So it's a spectrum, right? So there's a spectrum of sovereignty, and so being sovereign means different things to different people. I would say it means that I have the right to direct my life as I see fit, without free of coercion. Some people would say sovereignty means that you can't be canceled, and there's a spectrum to that. And so it's like, well, if I have to buy food, someone could cancel me. And so I'm not self-sovereign unless I grow my own food, I guess. Right. And so like, there's a spectrum to that. The way that I look at it is that it starts with the money. Right. And so if I can control my own money, that's the best place. But we don't know exactly the way things are going to unfold. I project based off of my 3 cycles thesis that I've been talking about quite a bit, that I think the world continues to get worse for the next couple of years, unfortunately. And then it starts getting better. I think by the end of the decade, we're going to be in a really good place. But we don't know exactly how it's going to work out. There's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know what the laws will be in California in 6 months, for example, right? I don't know if we'll be able to travel in 6 months. Like, who knows? Like, the world is so uncertain. And the way that we fight uncertainty is with optionality, right? So the more options I have, the better. So what does it look like? I mean, it means all those things that you suggested. It starts with your money. So now I have my money outside the banking system, and I can take that money with me anywhere I go. Okay, that's step number 1. But now, where would I go? So I'm building a house in Mexico right now. I have a community that I've been building down there for a decade. I have a community I've been working with down in El Salvador now. If I need to go to El Salvador, I have a community I could plug in there. So I've built some communities that I can plug in with. I'm actively building a home in another country. I'm working on buying another condo, not a timeshare, just a condo, do an Airbnb in another section of Mexico. I also just bought a 12.5 acre ranch outside of Austin. I'm in Southern California right now, but I bought a 12.5 acre ranch outside of Austin. So if I'm going to make my last stand, I'm going to be there. And so I have options, right? If California gets too crazy and runs me out, then I got my ranch in Austin. If the US is too crazy, I can bounce to Mexico. If Mexico's bad, I could bounce to El Salvador. And if it gets worse there, then I have enough money that I could probably go somewhere else. So I can be sovereign with my food and my land and my energy and my water here in the US. So anyway, I guess that's what it means to me.
I love that it's not just a one track, it's all encompassing, and you're really thinking about, every layer of your life, if you will. I want to ask you, just sort of, for those who have not had the chance, and if you haven't, take the time to go on Mark's YouTube channel. Like, he really dives in excellently explaining these 3 cycles. But do you mind just like touching on it briefly, letting our viewers know a little bit what this looks like and where you think we are in this cycle system?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, well, okay. So first off, we have like indicators. And so when you're looking at indicators, financial indicators, you're typically trying to find an indicator that tells you where things are going. The problem with indicators is they're not conclusive. You're looking for multiple indicators that tell you multiple things. And so what I've done is, a lot of people see that the financial system is really shaky. As a matter of fact, the IMF called for a Bretton Woods 2 moment, which Bretton Woods 1 was when the entire financial system was reset globally. And so Bretton Woods 2 means reset the global system. Of course, Klaus Schwab's calling for the Great Reset. The leaders are calling for the Build Back Better. So we see that. That's financially. We can also see politically, we're at a breaking point. We have people protesting all around the world. The truckers give it up Hong Kong for the people in Canada, but all over the world. I mean, all through Europe, they're protesting. And then we have technology that's changing the world. And so we have all these different sectors and all these things that are changing. And I think a lot of people wonder, like, what the heck is going on, right? Like, are the protesters out there, are the Hong Kongers out there, like, really, are they protesting vaccine mandates? In my opinion, the answer is no. What they're protesting is government overreach, right? And so while a lot of this looks random, a lot of people think what's going on today is like a black swan. Who would have ever known that a virus was going to come out and that this was going to happen? Like, who could have ever guessed? This is a total black swan event. But I would say, no, that's not true. As a matter of fact, history tells us what's going on, and it predicted that it was going to happen right now. And as a matter of fact, before the pandemic started, there was 10 countries with over 1 million people each already in the streets protesting before the mandates, or before even the pandemic. So this was already going on. So real quickly, about every 84 years, there's what's called a populist uprising or a regime change cycle. So 84 years ago was the end of World War II. Hitler, Mussolini, FDR in the United States created the New Deal, turned America from like a capitalist to a socialist nation. 84 years before that, Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, which led to the European Spring, the largest revolution that Europe ever had. Quick side note, Alex Svetsky and I just locked ourselves in an Airbnb for about 4 days in Austin a couple of weeks ago. We took the Communist Manifesto and we rewrote it. And we wrote a book called The Uncommunist Manifesto. And we're going to have them printed, and we're going to have them at Bitcoin conference, and we're going to be doing book signings there. We kept the same format. It's only 4 chapters. It's about 10,000 words. It's about a 45-minute to 60-minute read. Anybody can do it. And we took the exact book and just flipped it into what we think it should be, redefined the axis of struggle. Shout out, you can go to uncommunist.com and sign up for the pre-order of the book. We're going to sell it super cheap. We're just trying to get it out there. We wanted to infect minds just like the Communist Manifesto did. So anyway, that was 84 years ago. Sorry for that quick side note.
No, that's awesome. That I love these sprints that Bitcoiners are doing and getting out, just disseminating knowledge, producing books, selling them cheap. I love it.
Yeah, that book just won't die. I mean, and we have, the head of BLM is saying we're trained Marxist. Are you really? Do you know what Marxism really is? Have you ever taken the time to read the Communist Manifesto? Because I actually hadn't until about a year ago. And when I read it, I was like, how could anybody take this seriously? Like, this is pure evil. He says, communism can be summed up in one sentence. This is what the book says, in one sentence: abolishment of private property. Wow, really? That's the whole book summed up? He says that the bourgeoisie, which are the rich, they only have wives and kids for exploitation. That's the only reason. And women should be community property because they all treat them as community property anyway. Like, that's what he says in the book. Like, people are okay with that? Like, anyway, that's a whole sidetrack.
I genuinely wonder how that sat with his wife. Like, she'd probably, if he was married, or maybe he was divorced shortly after writing that.
Well, that's actually an important question that you ask, actually, Q, because I think to understand Marxism, you have to understand Karl Marx. And understand Karl Marx, you have to understand where he came from and what his life actually was. And so, to your point, he came from a very rich family. His parents, I think, were both attorneys, and they wanted him to follow in their footsteps and become rich and be attorneys. He didn't want to. He wanted to write philosophy, and he was mad. He was mad at the world that he couldn't survive writing philosophy because nobody valued that. And he got married. To your point, he had married and he had kids, and he was a horrible father. He couldn't provide for his family. I think at least one, I think maybe 2 of his kids died of like malnutrition. Like, he couldn't provide for his family. He would leave for extended periods of time and just leave them on their own. And he was mad at the world that he couldn't provide for his family writing philosophy because nobody valued it. But so imagine that. And that's the viewpoint of the person who wrote this book. Of course, he's mad at the rich. Why can't those rich people, they're good at making wealth, why can't they just give me some of their wealth so I can just do what I want to do, which is make philosophy, even though nobody values that? And now you start to understand why socialism, why he wrote about it like that, right? It was also during the time of the Industrial Revolution. So the world was just coming from farms into cities and factories. And I would imagine at the beginning of that Industrial Revolution, there was a big shift in the world where people lived as like communal on farms as families. And then they started working in factories. And then, on a farm, my father grew up on a farm. On a farm, everybody works, right? The 5-year-old kids are out there milking cows or whatever it is. And so you would imagine that when those farm families moved to the cities to work in factories, probably the whole family went to work in the factory as well, right? So the whole family was just there working because the whole family always worked. And then also I would imagine that it was probably pretty dangerous. They had just invented machinery. Like, it probably didn't work super good. It was probably dangerous. There was probably accidents happening. So he was also writing it from that lens. And at that time, the people with the capital were able to bring these farmers in, and maybe there was some exploitation. But that's not how it turned out, right? And so he wrote it in a period of time coming from a mad at the world standpoint and at a time when this industrial revolution was happening. But anyway, the book won't die today.
Yeah, the irony is like the whole industrial revolution, none of that would have happened without the ownership of private property. Like no civilization can prosper without it. So it's super interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is. And so he defined the struggle. And so all humans struggle. And Alex and we really hit on this. Like all humans struggle. Like there's finite resources, right? And limited time, right? We all struggle. But he outlined the struggle between two classes, right? The rich and the poor. We redefine the access of the struggle. And we labeled the struggle as the struggle between the individual and the collectivist trying to always co-opt them and assign them to groups. That's the struggle. How can I stay free to direct my life as I see fit? How can I stay to be a sovereign versus always trying to be pulled into these groups? So we kind of wrote it from that angle. Another big misconception is that people think that he wrote that book more as like an observation. Someone told me that the other day, and I was like, no. He wrote this as a call to arms. He finishes the book, "Workers of the world unite." That's what he said. That was his call to arms, which is pretty funny. It's actually pretty ironic where you have a nation like Canada going full socialist, and now you have the workers of Canada uniting, and they're not happy about it. kind of ironic, isn't it?
I have to read you this comment right now because it's hilarious. But Mr. G, the recycling guy, the Uncommunist Manifesto should naturally be printed hardcover with gold leaf pages for nothing less than the low price of $899. The commies would get so triggered. That just put a nice little smile and chuckle on my face. But you also kind of describe in the way that you presented Marx and how he came to be and, you know, his life. It's very similar to those kids out of New York, like the trust fund kids at the beginning of COVID who are like, oh, I don't want this. I don't need this money. Let's make laws so that no one can be awarded this much money for doing nothing. It's like, bro, the privilege you speak with, I would love the opportunity to do so many things with that money that you're just handed.
So that was a whole tangent. I'm sorry for going down. But by the way, go to uncommunist.com and pre-order the book. Because it's just we're selling it for almost nothing. We're trying to get enough money to print enough copies and take it out and try to spread that. Anyway, so 3 times 84 equals 252. So every 250 years, there's a revolution, a political revolution. So 250 years ago was the American Revolution, French Revolution. 250 years before that was the Protestant Reformation. And those represent pushing back on centralization and moving towards decentralization. At the same time, so that's a 250-year time frame. On a 50-year time frame, we have technological revolutions or K-waves. And so technological revolutions are not new technologies like an iPhone. It's a revolution that changes the course of humanity. Think steel, electricity, automobiles, microprocessors. They change the way the world works. For all of humanity, people walked and rode horses, and then we had cars. Right? For all of humanity, people used fire for light, and then we had electricity. And so those happened on about a 50-year time frame, and here we are witnessing. So 1971 was the birthplace of the microprocessor, which led to personal computers and telecommunications and the internet and what we're doing right now. 1971 plus 50 years puts us 2021, and we're witnessing another technological revolution, the decentralized technological revolution. Bitcoin is that technological revolution. And it's happening right at the same time as the 250-year political revolution cycle. So right at the same time as the world is rejecting centralization, we have a new technology that gives us the tool that we need for decentralization, which is pretty cool. And so I think it's pretty apparent for anybody to see that the world is peak centralization: World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, World Meteorological Association, UN, IMF, et cetera. But the whole world's pushing back on that. As I said, pre-pandemic, there was 10 countries with over 1 million people each marching. And so what's happening with these farmers, or I'm sorry, the truckers in Canada, it's not about the mandate. It is about the mandates, but it's because the centralization is too much. They're squeezing too hard. They realize that they're losing their grip. They realize that technology is displacing them with the internet. Just like in the 1500s, the Protestant Reformation, the church was displaced because the printing press gave Bibles out to everybody. And no matter how many people they killed, labeled them heretics and killed them, they couldn't stop what was happening. They tried and they killed a lot of people. And very similar, what's happening today is they are not able to stop this amount of information. Alternative news sources have grown too big and they can't hide anymore. And it's their last gasp. They're trying to squeeze as hard as they can to hang on to whatever they can, just like the Protestant Reformation did. The church killed a lot of people. They're killing people today. They're assassinating them online, right? They're deplatforming them, et cetera. So this is not a black swan event. This is what happens. And then on top of that, we have the financial revolution. So about every 80 years, this is an 80-year time frame, the financial system gets reset. And so again, 80 years ago was the Bretton Woods. Now, 80 years later, they're calling for Bretton Woods 2. We know that from a macro, financial standpoint, we can see that the central banks have two tools, interest rates and monetary supply. Well, interest rates are zero or negative in most parts of the world. So there's not much they can do there. And they've created $20 trillion in the last 2 years to try to prop up the markets. Like there's over $300 trillion of debt they've created in 50 years. Like what can they do? And so that whole system has to be reset. If you and I were playing a game and we're out of moves, you reset the game, right? So that's on an 80-year time frame, technology on a 50-year time frame, political on a 250-year time frame, but all three are converging right now. And what it tells us is that the future, so a lot of people say, will the dollar remain as the reserve currency, or will the Chinese yuan take over, or will we go to an SDR CBDC, or will we go back to gold? But see, all those people are looking for a centralized answer, but the future is not centralized. The future is decentralized. That's what history tells us. And so I think it shows that Bitcoin is inevitable, in my opinion.
I love that. I mean, I kind of want to ask a follow-up on this last point, though. While I think we're all on the same page, Bitcoin will eventually be the world reserve currency. Do you see a world, though, where the USD just does not exist anymore? There's no more dollars in circulation, or do you think it will coexist in the future with Bitcoin?
I mean, the problem with these types of questions is over what time frame, right? So I think it coexists for a really long time. Just like we've seen like the pound sterling, right? I mean, it's still around. It's lost 99% of its value, but it's like still there. Nobody really uses it globally, but like whatever, it's still there. And so to kind of to the question that you asked, or the statement that you made that Bitcoin will be the reserve currency over at a long enough time frame, probably. In the short term, I think the future is decentralized. So it's my reserve, and it's most likely your reserve. It's also MicroStrategy reserve. It's also El Salvador's reserve. But a lot of people are still on gold or dollars or oil or whatever, right? And so I think the world over the next few decades is very decentralized. And then eventually we'll converge back to one again. So I think the dollar sticks around for a really long time.
Awesome. I definitely agree with that. And glad to hear someone smarter than me also thinks that. I want to unpack a little bit about this convoy. You've brought it up a couple of times. We at Bitcoin Magazine are doing as much as possible to bring attention to it. You bring up a very valid point. Mainstream media is not reporting on it, nor are they reporting, quite frankly, fairly on it. I don't want to be that guy saying, oh, it's unfair, but to paint people as villains without really showing them what they are fighting for. And I think you are defining it very well. They're painted as they don't want to take the vaccine, but that's not what this is. It is very much, hey, enough is enough. Like, I'm doing everything you have asked, and you keep on asking for more inches, more feet. Enough. Where the line has been drawn and you're not crossing it. Talk to us a little bit about like what feelings this has brought up, what sort of your initial thoughts or reactions have been over the course of it started, over the course of Canadian government, like pushing back, and then the GoFundMe debacle.
Where this really came onto my radar, this whole thesis, where it really came onto my radar was Brexit happening like in 2016, and then Trump was elected, which was, against the establishment. But then really it was, if you guys remember, the Yellow Jackets in France. And the Yellow Jackets in France were protesting. And just like the news media today, the news media said, oh, they're mad about a gas tax. Like, no. They're mad about way more than the gas tax. That might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But again, they were mad of the continual government overreach, right? And continuing to make their lives harder and harder. And so it's only continued to escalate since then. So to your point, the news media, some of the things I've seen, like I said, they're protesting vaccines. Well, okay, that maybe it's that thing, but like it's bigger than that, right? It's like they're protesting that they can't work. They can't feed their families. They don't have freedom to move around their country. They don't even have freedom of religion, which is like which is like specifically guaranteed. They don't even have that. And, humans can take a lot of things. If you go back through history and you look at all these revolutions that have happened, the final breaking point almost every single time is when people can't take care of their family. If people can't feed their family, it's called 9 meals to anarchy. You don't eat for 9 meals, it's on, right? My kids don't eat for 3 meals, someone's getting jacked, right? Like it's like that. And like when you can't feed your family, that's the breaking point. So they have literally taken away these people's ability to work, to travel, to even get food in some cases. What do they expect is going to happen? So is it about the vaccine? The vaccine, I guess, but it's much more than that. The government has gotten way too big. It's gotten way too hard for these people to live. Now I made a video, actually, I think it's going live this evening about it. And what I said is that, Trudeau came out and said, this is the fringe minority. These don't represent the most Canadians, right? It's fringe. I made a tweet that said the government is the fringe, right? If you think about it, right? The government makes up just a small percentage of the population. The government is the fringe. But he said that these people were the fringe. Well, how do we know? How do we know that? Did we take a poll? Have we done a vote? How do we know who really is the fringe here? Well, we know because the best vote we can ever make, the most important vote that we all make, the reason why I left Puerto Rico December 29th of 2021 is because we vote with our money. That's the best vote. Now, I can say whatever I want on a piece of paper. That's why the polls, when they run election polls, they're not nearly as accurate as the betting markets. The betting markets are way more accurate because people have skin in the game, right? They're putting their money where their mouth is versus a poll. Anybody can say whatever they want. So our money is our best vote. Now, they didn't run a poll in Canada to find out who the fringe is, but they kind of did. So GoFundMe raised over $10 million before they shut it off. Now there's been another 3 million raised, I think, on the other one. And now there's another million almost on the Bitcoin one. So whatever, that's almost 15 million. Well, Trudeau's campaign only raised $3 million in the last quarter. As a matter of fact, all the political parties of Canada combined in the last quarter have only raised, I think, 8 or 9 million. So to me, that's the vote. People have put their money where their mouth is. We have 15 million being raised for the truckers, and we have 3 million being raised for Trudeau. The vote's in. The people have spoken, right? So I think that frames it up, in my opinion. And the news is out. People see it. People agree. But it's a very dangerous situation that we're in right now. A couple of things that I think. One, unfortunately, and I hate to sensationalize things like this, but like this is the stand. Like this is the Alamo. Like growing up in South Texas, the story of the Alamo is very dear to me. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking at Unconfiscatable in Vegas in March, and I'm giving a talk based on the Alamo. Come and take it if you guys have seen the flag, right? The Gonzales flag. But even though the people at the Alamo died, it was the rally cry that brought the U.S. into the war, and finally they won their independence from Mexico. And that's how it is in Canada right now. Like if the truckers cave at this point, there's no protest that's ever going to stand up again to this. Like it's almost like a now or never. And man, I don't know what's going to happen.
And if they don't, this can be replicated across the world, as we see that
it already is.
Yeah, they can unite to defeat the government, like corrupt mandates. It's going to be great.
There was like 90,000 trucks that were supposed to be doing a convoy in the United States. There's trucks that have been lining up in Australia, trucks that have been lining up in some places in Europe. I forget now. I mentioned them in my videos. But I mean, it's starting to kind of catch on. And that's one thing that the governments can't have. They don't want people to see this, which is why it's always media blackout on New Zealand as well. Yeah. It's always been media blackout because they don't want this to catch on. But it's go time.
Yeah. I'm very curious what would or is happening in the United States that we just haven't heard about, because I was working in the downtown of a city during when Black Lives Matter was kind of at its height, and I think regardless of the cause, I was amazed at how quickly they brought in National Guard and started throwing flashbangs, pepper spraying, like they dispersed these protests, demonstrations that were peaceful where I was. They were peaceful when they started. You know, I saw the whole thing, totally peaceful, but they just destroyed them and disper in the United States. We have no tolerance for it.
I mean,
It's
I
kind of
don't know if
amazing.
that's I don't know if that's totally true, Alex. I mean,
Okay.
we saw cities burned to the ground, dude. Like obviously Kenosha, we saw Portland, Oregon, like we saw cities burned to the ground. I mean, in LA and New York City, all the stores got completely looted and they're boarded up. We saw obviously in
But that's different. That's different from the protests that the truckers are doing, is it not?
Oh no, it's totally different. But you were talking
Right.
about the BLM Antifa riots or whatever, how they were mostly peaceful and they broke them up. I mean, they
Uh,
occupied a whole city block in Seattle, the Chalk District, right? Like,
I'm
right,
gonna
right.
challenge and push back on a couple of these though. Like I could speak to LA, having been in LA, having seen some of these protests firsthand. Yes, absolutely, there are some protests that got out of hand. That's across the board. I would say you can find a protest that eventually gets out of hand with bad actors involved. That's unfortunately human nature. I will say, like going to the Grove in West Hollywood after the National Guard was here and just like sitting to get food with National Guardsmen walking around with guns was one of the most surreal experiences. It couldn't click in my head that I was not only in America, I was in Los Angeles in my hometown. That was really weird and uncomfortable for me personally. But to your point, yes, it got out of control in some areas. And I think when it does in that regard, there needs to be some sort of a response to that. And I will give a lot of credit to leadership on the left for condemning those actions, for saying that this is not the way we want to approach this. There were other leaders who did vocally say, like, fuck this, burn everything to the ground. But there were others who also did speak up and say, like, this is not going to accomplish anything.
yeah.
Right, right. I'm not even commenting like rightly or wrongly on, you know, should this protest be allowed to exist? Should this protest be allowed to exist? I'm just
First
saying in
Amendment, they all should.
random fringe small towns where people gather, a lot of places in the United States don't put up with that, and they will squash those those movements. So I mean, if
Yeah.
they're gonna have it happen in the United States, we're gonna have to see a concerted effort here, I feel like,
Yeah. Well,
soon.
I love, I love what the Canadians are doing. So far, they've really tried to keep it super peaceful. As a matter of fact, I've seen reports showing that crime has actually gone down in most of the areas that they've been in because they're working super hard to squash anything. There's been stories about, you know, provocateurs coming up and trying to start problems, and they've been keeping it super chill. To your point, though, in the United States, I mean, just 2 weeks ago, they had those 2 or 3 days of marches on the U.S. Capitol, right? There was one that we were talking before, like my friend JP Sears, he was that with, you know, Dr. I think RFK Jr. and some others, they were there protesting mandates. That was pretty big. And then there was one, I think the day before as well. So, I mean, they're happening. You know, I think if the US was as bad as Canada was, we would probably see a whole different thing, right? And so we luckily have it pretty good here. Like we're not prohibited from traveling. I'm not prohibited from feeding my family. If I was, what's on, but we have Second Amendment too, so that's a whole nother story to not get into. But back to the truckers, I think it's super important. What I love, and I put a tweet out about this, is that when it was Satoshi Nakamoto's second to last message, and he went on the Bitcoin Talk message board, and at the time, Julian Assange and WikiLeaks had gotten cut off from PayPal, and nobody could send them money, right? So Bitcoin is censorship resistant, not just in a sense where I can hold my wealth, where it can't be stolen or inflated or confiscated, but even where I can send it to anybody I want, right? And with PayPal, you can't. And so they had blocked people's payments via PayPal. And they said, hey, just start sending Bitcoin. And his second to last message was paraphrasing that, you know, Bitcoin's not ready. It's not ready for this. Don't bring the heat. We're not ready for that. And then he said, here comes the hornet's nest or something like that. But today, Bitcoin is ready. Bitcoin is on the world stage. And as much, what I love about this is that these leaders, these policies, the more they squeeze, the more they lose. And they're doing Bitcoin's marketing for them. Anybody who wondered if there was a use case for Bitcoin is starting to find out very quickly that, shoot, I can't use traditional finance. I can't have my money in the bank. I can't use GoFundMe. I need another system. And they're really bringing a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs. They're the best marketing department we have. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say Bitcoin is probably at this point one of the most recognizable brands without being a brand, without really having a product. Most, if not, yeah, I'd say most of the world knows or is aware of it. Um, I want to talk, we've talked a little bit about this decentralization concept and the fact that that is really what separates Bitcoin from, frankly, anything, whether it's fiat, altcoins, anything else.
Yep.
But we also, I think, don't discuss enough the secondary and tertiary layers of Bitcoin, for example, Lightning, Podcast 2.0, and so on. There is a level of centralization in these components. And talk to me a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about how do we separate the decentralization of Bitcoin to centralize in some capacity, whether it's businesses built on top, and then keep it pure? Because
Yep.
eventually I fear we could run into just the same problem, just exacerbated.
Yes and no, right? So I think there's a couple things. So what happens is that everything in life has trade-offs. Everything. There's a cost benefit analysis to everything. And early on in the crypto days, Vitalik Buterin made the trilemma, right? So the dilemma is I have to choose between two things. Trilemma is one of three things, and right. So it was speed, decentralization, and security. And so in 2017, Bitcoin went through the block size wars, and they sacrificed decentralization for speed. Right? They got more speed, they got less decentralization. And so by keeping the block sizes small, we kept it slow, but we kept it decentralized and secure. So we sacrificed speed to keep the security and decentralization, which is the way I think it should be on the base layer. As we scale up, we can make whatever trade-offs we want. So for example, Monero is great, right? I mean, it's kind of like Bitcoin, and it's private, et cetera. But they've made trade-offs on the base layer that are not acceptable to me, right? Like the ability to not be able to, clearly or easily be able to verify the network, for example, right, is one of them. And so like, I'm okay making that trade-off up higher. So for example, Lightning, to your point, is more centralized. I used Lightning when I was in El Salvador to buy my cup of coffee. That cup of coffee does not need to be on the base layer, immutable for all of eternity. It doesn't need to be there. It's a cup of coffee, man, right? So I'm okay making the trade-off on a higher level to give up the security for speed. Right? I'm okay with that. Now, if I want to send $1 million, I would rather wait the longer amount of time because I want the security. I don't need the speed. And so what happens is we can make those trade-offs as we go up. Now, to your point, yes, we're trading off. We're getting more centralized. So we're getting more of the trilemma. We're getting more speed or lower fees, but less decentralization. And eventually, to your point, yes, we could start to see more centralized applications being built on top of Bitcoin. Where I don't have a problem with that is I believe that in the free market that we still have and will have more of, as these people will be competing as second, third layer applications, people will be able to choose. Am I okay giving up, taking more centralization? But because everyone's building on the same base layer, everyone's going to be giving different trade-offs. And us as consumers will be able to choose which applications we want based off of which trade-offs we're okay with, and the free market will decide. But we can always go back and use that base layer and have that full decentralization if we want.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. I definitely I've had some fears about that, but that explanation actually makes sense with the tertiary trade-offs. I want to go to another notable news story that everyone has talked about ad nauseum and will frankly continue to, the censorship issues that have been going on. Again, this goes back to centralized control. You see governments stepping in, the Joe Rogan Spotify issue. Zion, even just today, I saw JP Sears posting something about welcoming the Joe Rogan show to Zion. And you've seen other platforms offering this as well. Talk to me a little bit about just what you've seen as far as censorship and what issues you want to see resolved in that space specifically.
Yeah. So I think, again, kind of growing up in this kind of political household, a line of, warriors, war heroes, thinking I'd go to war one day. I mean, I grew up under the Cold War. I don't remember the exact moment it hit me, but there was a moment where all of a sudden I was like, I can't say what I want online anymore. Like, as a content creator, as someone who puts my content out there all the time, I remember that moment where I was like, I remember the thought and the feeling. I don't remember the date that it was. But it's a hard realization for me as somebody who grew up under the Cold War and always was taught that communism was bad, and taught that, oh my gosh, they don't get to decide what they want to do with their own labor. They don't get to decide what they don't have freedom of speech. Oh my gosh. And I remember that day. It was a sad realization. I think probably the first time it really hit was when Alex Jones was deplatformed. He was probably the first person. Within weeks of taking Alex Jones off the face of the earth, I think there was like 800 people on both sides, left and right, that were deplatformed. And it's just been escalating ever since. A couple of things that I would say to that, though, like with this Joe Rogan deal, for example, which is obviously, front and center at this point, there's a couple of things. First off, the internet's pretty decentralized already. So the internet has become centralized in the sense that we're all on Twitter, or we're all on Facebook, but the internet itself is decentralized. So, for example, BitTorrent. I've been downloading movies and music. I mean, I used to. I don't do anymore. But like, I've downloaded music and movies on BitTorrent, a decade ago or whatever, right? Like, they haven't been able to shut that down, and that's like all the power of music and media and movie and Hollywood and the government came full bore after that. And they just can't shut that down. The internet's pretty decentralized. It's the payments. It's all about the payments. The payments is what they control. The internet has decentralized us. The internet allows me to go be part of the global community anywhere in the world. I can do my job anywhere in the world. The internet allows me to do that. It's the payments that they have. That's what Bitcoin is fixing, the payments. So, Joe Rogan, for example, Joe Rogan could host his shows on a BitTorrent stream and it could not be censored. And then he could set up a payment app through Bitcoin and people could donate or pay to listen to his shows, and he could be 100% uncancelable, right? So I think we already have that there. So I think that's it from a technology standpoint. You mentioned JP Sears' letter to Joe Rogan on Zion. I'm involved in Zion. I'm moving my community onto Zion. And basically right now it has about the same functionality of Telegram. And so I can create a community and my community can chat between, inside to each other. I can have my podcast episodes in there. And as they're streaming my content down, they can stream sats up to me. But what's cool about that is when they're chatting in that community, the messages are going peer to peer. They're not going through Telegram or WhatsApp servers. They're going peer to peer over the Lightning Network. And then also, you've heard a lot about, specifically in the Web3 or the crypto space of like, we'll be able to own our own data, right? Well, when you have your own node, your own Bitcoin Lightning node, and you operate on a network like Zion, you own your data on your node. And so, for example, my community is built on my node, and nobody has the power, no Facebook or whatever can shut that community down. I own that community. It's on my node. I have the private key for that. And so for Zion, it's not that they don't censor you or that maybe one day they would censor you. It's that they can't. It's on my node. They can't control that. So we have the Getter and the Parlors that have sprung up, and Trump's going to launch his or whatever. And they promise to not censor you. They promise to be open speech, like Twitter promised to be that as well. But who knows when they get squeezed, when they go public, down the line, what they might change. They replace the CEO, whatever. But with Zion, it's not that they won't; it's that they can't. And so I think that's pretty cool. So I think that's helpful. But I think, so I don't know. That's it from a tech standpoint. And then there's a whole societal piece we can talk about, but I'll stop there.
No, please. Like, we talk about this a lot. We were deplatformed for a moment for just triggering the algorithm. We didn't even say anything malicious. So like we discussed censorship and deplatforming a ton. I've said repeatedly, I will show my cards. I am left leaning. I know that about myself, but I also am a huge believer. Just because you have a different opinion does not mean I have the right to tell you not to talk. You have the absolute right to share your opinion, and I have the right to choose to listen or not listen to you. That is on me. That is not on someone else to tell me what I can and can't listen to. And that's where it becomes dangerous in my mind. But I'd love your thoughts.
But it always comes down to the platform. I mean, we all chose out of our own free will to use this centralized platform because of the ease of access, because of the bandwidth, because of the reach. So it's about creating the Zions and the decentralized alternatives, and not simply hopping, like you pointed out, from Twitter to Getter. That does nothing for us.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to ask you about that, Q, because you're left leaning, but you don't want to censor anybody. I specifically like to push back on that. What is left? What is right? They said socialists are on the left. They say fascism is on the right. They say like whatever, right? Like and this is part of Svetsky and I wrote this book about this. I don't like those terms. I don't know what left and right is anymore. I don't know why socialism is left and fascism is right. The way that we see the world, the way that I see the world is individuals or collectives, right? Individuals or collectivists. So in my opinion, both socialism and fascism are both collectivist. So you're on the left. I don't even know what that means. Like, are you for the individual being able to have freedom to choose what they want?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that to me would be on the right, but whether it's on the left or right, I don't know. Like, it's about the individual having freedom to choose.
Totally.
The way that I look at, and this is why I don't like labels, because we all have these different words in our heads, but like I look at the left as the people that want to censor and deplatform and whatever. So you say you're left leaning, but you're not for canceling and censoring people. So I would look at that as on the right, but again, we've lost these meanings. And so I just look at it as like, we both believe in individualism and sovereignty. We're on the same side.
100%. And I totally agree with you. Like, I hate the labels of it. If anything, I've been called.
You said it.
I know.
That's what
we're training him to stop saying that he's on the left. We've been over the course of the show programming Q to become more sovereign.
Definitely a process of deprogramming me for sure. 100%.
Because I would say, I think, maybe the left used to be like liberalism, right? So liberalism, like I should be able to be gay or be married and be gay, or I should whatever. But that was more about like, I'm an individual. Who's the government to tell me that I can or can't get married? Like, that's ridiculous in the first place. So I think what liberalism was really for freedom, like classical liberalism, but now it's been hijacked by the left, which again, I see as more of the pro-censorship, pro-cancel kind of culture. The classic liberalism is individualism, whereas the left is collectivism. So I don't know if you see it like that.
I agree with what you're saying, and I don't. The one point that I want to push back on is the notion of like, it's either collectivism or individualism. I agree with the idea that like the origins of liberalism are meant to be individualist so that we can make decisions that we see fit for ourselves, our families, and our community. I think part of the reason why I lean left, if you will, is my upbringing. And then beyond that too, I felt growing up that the people who spoke about the issues that matter to me, the things that I wanted to see change, and frankly, like I'll be blunt, I can't stand Donald Trump, but the main reason I can't stand Donald Trump is because he called my country a shithole country. Like, them be fighting words, but that's just me talking. That may not be the same decision for
but that's
else.
also that I mean, then that gets into like nationalism and how nationalism is used against you to really try to get you into to try to pick sides, and how they try to get the US fighting with Russia so they can embolden this nationalism. We want to join the military, and that's all freaking games anyway. Like I grew up a patriot, like from a line of people going to war. I thought I'd go to war. I mean, I have the Statue of Liberty tattooed on my arm right here. But now that I'm older, I'm just like, every war that we've gone to was really to protect the interests of a few rich people. Like, none of the wars that we've gone to have ever increased our freedom. As a matter of fact, all the wars have taken away the freedom. And so like that whole nationalism thing, to your point, and I'm still a patriot, and I still love the ideology and the values of what America stood for. But today the left or whoever has tried to destroy any values or what America stood for. And so anyway, you got mad because he said something bad about your country, but maybe just kind of rethink that, right? Where it's like, it's probably not a personal attack. And the fact that you take it personally, you might be being played a little bit. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
No, I mean, look, Mark, you're going to have to come up. I'm in the South Bay. I have one of the best surfing spots in the country down the street from me. Anytime you want, come up. We could chat about this for
and I live in San Clemente, so I surf the lower trestles all the time. You can come down here.
Boom. But, I do want to, so one thing you keep bringing up, and this is just from what I have studied and learned, and maybe you may not disagree, but you talk about it's either individualism or collectivism. I was always a big believer that you just said war was always fought for the best interest of an individual. I frankly agree with that and even take it a step further, that if it wasn't for that, it was based on religion. Oh, this person doesn't pray to the same God as me, therefore you are less than me, therefore I have the right to kill you or change your mind. So I always, frankly, hated religion because I viewed it as this thing that forced people into hatred and forced you into sides. As I've studied more about human history, though, we tend to be this sort of collective groupism. You see back in hunter-gatherer periods, you had groups of 30 or so hunter-gatherers that would go out. You see it in the next iteration of humanity in the agricultural revolution, when you have knights watching over certain areas and protecting farmers, and it progresses into nation states now. How do we combat that? Because again, going back to the question I asked about potentially centralizing about Bitcoin, we talk in the sovereign individual specifically about these sovereign individuals will sort of create communities, if you will, and then these people will come in that agree with the values being put forward or the work being done in this community. How is that not, in a degree, some form of community or centralization?
It is. It is. So neither extreme is good, in my opinion. So being 100% decentralized and 100% self-sovereign, that's not a good world. Like, I'm going to live all by myself on a mountaintop and I have to grow my own food and make my own clothes and build my own house. Like, I don't want to live in that world. We are, to the point that you've made, I mean, we are, as humans, we're communal people, right? We love community. We would like to work together. The difference is that as an individual, I direct my life as I see fit, but you and I can collectively work together when it suits our interests. So for example, if we were together and somebody tried to come kill us, we would decide to work together to combat that killer, because that is in our best interest, right? You and I might decide to start a business together. We might decide to plant a field together because it's in both of our interests to do that. So we are communal. We do want to have community. We do want to work together, but as individuals, when our interests align. The problem is that we're co-opted into a collectivist and we're forced to do things that we don't want to do. And so, to your point, yes, neither extreme is good, right? 100% central controlled, which is communism, or 100% decentralized, where I live by myself on a mountaintop. Neither one of those are good, and there's a blend. But the blend, or the spectrum, is more on the individual side, where I can align with different interests and groups when it fits my needs. So, for example, I lived in a gated neighborhood. There was a homeowners association. I had to pay $450 a month, my taxes, to join that association. But I had tennis courts and I had a pool, and the neighborhood was beautiful. But then I couldn't park my car on the street, and I couldn't put a ramp in the front yard for my kids. And so, like, am I okay with these restrictions? I mean, I have to pay the fee, but I have these benefits, and I lived there for 5 years, and then I left. Right. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to go over here. And now I'm in a neighborhood with no homeowner association. But you know what? Now my neighbor parks a junky car in front of his house, and this guy doesn't keep up his yard. But I can put a skate ramp in front. Right. And so, like, I'm able to make those choices and align with different interests or different collectives based off of what I want as an individual. And so that's kind of how I see it. I think 330 million people in the United States is way too many people for Joe Biden to be deciding over. He doesn't know what I want here in Southern California. He's never even been here, probably, right? And so we need to get back. I mean, the United States was meant to be a decentralized nation, 50 independent states, and they should be self-sovereign as it was intended to be. And it really should be even smaller than that. So I agree with your point. It's the spectrum that I think we kind of have to decide on. But I think it errs on the side of the individual, and then the individual aligning themselves with communities.
Thank you for that definition. I think we do get lost sometimes on this binary spectrum and not realize that life in general is a spectrum. It's not this or that. It can be a multitude of different things. So
that's one of the biggest problems that I see with people today, specifically in the financial niche, kind of where I focus on, is that people come in and say Bitcoin will never make it, or Bitcoin is going to go to 1 million, or like they make these statements, and it's like, it's never going to make it, really? Like, do you think it has a 1% chance maybe of making it? Like, okay, yeah, a 1%. Okay, then why did you say it would never will, right? So people talk in these absolutes, and I really see a problem where people are, they're not flexible with their thinking. They're not able to understand the nuance of these subjects. Like, we talk about inflation, 7%. Do you even know what that means? Like, how can you put inflation on a single number? There's a lot of nuance there. And so, to your point, yeah, everything's a spectrum, everything's a trade-off. And I think people need to really understand that. And that would also probably bring a lot more ability for us to communicate a lot better as well.
definitely. We didn't really get a chance to, we touched on it briefly, but your story always fascinates me, aggressively trying to get involved into real estate, especially in Southern California, my area, my hometown. Um, and just sort of what happened as far as the '08 financial crisis leading you into Bitcoin. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about what are some similarities that you saw between leaving real estate, if you will, and then seeing Bitcoin? What was sort of the similarities and the differences that really sold it to you?
Well, it wasn't. I don't know if it was necessarily similarities. I think the problem is like I said, like I had done really good at making money. I mean, not to sound whatever arrogant, but I just right out of high school at 18 years old, I started buying bank-owned repos. I started fixing them up and flipping them, and went on to do over 100 of those. And I owned over 200 rental properties. I started 2 different businesses, one in a medical equipment business, and I started an e-commerce business in 2001 at the bottom of the dot-com crash. Fortune 500 exits on the businesses. Like I just did really good. I was making a lot of money. But then in 2008, when the great financial crash happened, I just got wiped out. And it wasn't that necessarily had a similarity, but it was the motivation that one made me motivated to figure out what is going on in this financial system. Right. And so I poured deep into my own education. That's when I found out that it's the fiat money system that's the problem, and these guys' ability to print more fiat currency, and the solution to that would be go back to gold. I thought, in 2008. Eventually, I found out it's sound money. So I don't know if there was a lot of similarities, other than like I said, it was the motivation for what I do today. As a matter of fact, I showed you. Real quick, this is my new office. I'm just moving into today. It's about 1,600 square feet. I'm going to build this into a giant video and podcast studio. But so today's my first day here. And interesting enough, this building that I'm in is the building that I built. It was a $12 million building. I built this building and I lost it to the bank in 2008. And the people that bought this building from the bank, I tried to sell it for 12 million. They bought it for 4. I had it listed. I turned an offer down at 11 million because I thought I could get to 12. And it ended up going back to the bank. The bank sold it for 4 million. And the people that I'm renting, now I'm renting from the people that own it. So I've come full circle. But I'm not mad about it. I think, like I said, it was the motivation. And part of the motivation too was that after I got into Bitcoin, I went into cryptocurrency. And from about 2016 to 2019, I wrote a cryptocurrency research newsletter. I personally researched and published over 1,000 pages of research on every crypto project out there during that time frame. The decentralized exchanges and the privacy coins, and I mean, you name it, right? From 2016 to 2019 was quite a run in crypto. But I saw people making the same mistake that I made, which was putting all their eggs in one basket. And people, I mean, during that time, I put out over 20 positions that went up over 1,000%. One of my calls went up over 100,000% during that. That turns $500 into $500,000. Like, it did amazing, but yet people were still losing money. And it was like, for the same reasons that I lost in 2008. And so it helped me change the way, it's my motivation to help educate. So it's all my motivation of why I do what I do today, helping educate people, helping people understand the financial system better, because that's what I was missing. In 2019, after doing 1,000 pages of research, I decided it's all a waste of time. I'm only going to focus on Bitcoin. So since 2019, I've been Bitcoin only. A lot of times people go, when I talk about other cryptocurrencies, they're like, Mark, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to do your own research. I'm like, I've published over 1,000 pages of research. Like, how many have you published? Because like I've done it, and I've come full circle. So I'd say, like I said, it wasn't necessarily similarities, other than that pain and that I went through gave me the motivation, I guess, to do what I'm doing today.
I just got to say, on behalf of those who listen and read some of your work, thank you. Thank you for teaching us the lessons that you unfortunately had to learn the hard way. But I am truly grateful for the lessons you teach. So thank you for that. I'd love to ask you, what is your definition of the difference between Bitcoin and crypto?
I would say I would ask a question, and I would say, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So when I look at the world, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems in the world. We can talk about any of them, from censorship to income inequality to incarceration rate to divorce rate to obesity. I mean, you name it. I believe every single problem, if we had a tree, an oak tree with 10,000 leaves, and every leaf on a tree is a problem, at the base of that tree, at the root, sits the money printer. That's my opinion. And so the problem that we're trying to solve, in my opinion, is the centralization. It's the control over the money supply. It's the censorship. It's all those things, but it sits at the money supply, the money printer. That's the problem. Fix the money, fix the world, right? As I said, the internet's already decentralized. Like, they can't shut down BitTorrent. It's the money. We have to fix the money. We have to take it out of the hands of the government. We have to take it away from the people that control it. We didn't need faster money. That wasn't a problem. That wasn't going to change the world. Like, money's already fast. Like, I have Visa. Visa's faster than Bitcoin, apparently, right? Like, I didn't need faster money. What we needed is we need to take the money out of the hands of the government. We have to fix the money. So I see Bitcoin as the only option to do that, right? If we have an unlimited money supply, we need something with a fixed supply cap. If we have money that's censorable, we need something that's censorship resistant. We're in a world today that we used to have a rule of law. The Constitution was meant to be a rule of law that was easy for everyone to understand. And I could plan my life based off those set of laws, and you could also plan your life based off those set of laws. If we played a game of basketball, if I would have to play differently than LeBron James because he's way taller and faster, so I'd have to play different, but I would have to play different inside the rules. And I understand those rules. But today we're ruled by men. Men change the rules all the time. I don't know what the rules will be in California in a month from now. Gavin Newsom could change them again, right? And so we need immutable law. And so when I look at all the other cryptocurrencies, if I want fixed money supply, censorship resistant, and immutable law, I only see one that does that. So Cardano, for example, has decentralized governance. I don't want decentralized governance. I don't want governance. I don't want someone to change the rules. Like Ethereum, right? One of the big gripes with Ethereum is that we had an unknown issuance on the monetary supply. So whatever, 6 months ago, Vitalik Buterin and guys, they got together and they changed that. They changed the monetary issuance of Ethereum. That's the same as the fiat money system. I don't want that, right? And so I think the difference is, and again, having been in that world for a long time, the difference is what we're trying to do. I'm trying to change the world. I got kids. I'm not happy with the world that my kids are going to inherit. And I have decided that I will dedicate every minute for the rest of my life to changing that. And there's one way to do that. Now, in the crypto space, those guys are trying to make money. And they're making a lot of money. My old business partner, when I had the crypto newsletter, my old business partner went on and he launched a new project on Solana, and he'll probably have $100 million in the account by the end of the year. We're just not focused on the same thing. I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to change the world. And I think Bitcoin is the only option for that.
I want to ask, what does immutable law mean? I mean, Bitcoin, surely I agree with you, is the only thing that's not, it's the only property that is immune to governance. And it is the only thing you can truly own, in my opinion, which is why, I mean, it does break down the traditional diversify your investments model, in my opinion. It's just Bitcoin. It's the only sure bet. But outside of that, what does immutable law mean? I feel like so long as we live in states, we'll always live under the governance of men and women.
Well, we will, just like my homeowners association example, right? So I lived under the governance of that homeowners association, but I was able to move, and now I don't live under a homeowners association, right? For example. But back to the immutable law, I think it's that through traditional crypto assets, you have proof of stake, right? And so whoever has the most tokens stakes them, and whoever has the most stake gets the most votes, right? And so they can change these rules arbitrarily. Back to the truckers in Canada, was it yesterday? Ottawa made it where now you can't honk your horn for the next 10 days. Like, guys that just arbitrarily just make, nope, no more honking now. Honking's illegal. Like,
did they stop? I mean, it seems like a silly law to try to implement when you've got people protesting.
I don't know. I mean, that was like yesterday. I haven't kept up on it, but if one of the most important books everybody should read is read everything that Hayek wrote, but The Road to Serfdom is probably the most important book in there. His seminal book, The Constitution of Liberty, is good too. But the Road to Serfdom, everybody should read that book. And I believe it's chapter 6. He really digs into law. And he talks about how the law needs to be, put up in advance. It needs to be easy to understand. And it has to apply to everybody equally, like the game of basketball. LeBron James, he's bigger, he's faster, he shoots better than me. Like, it's not fair. But what is fair is we both have to abide by the same set of rules in the game of basketball, right? And so the law needs to be equally applied, and it can't be just done arbitrarily. Like, oh, no more honking, can't honk now. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you can't just do that. And so that's what I mean. So whenever we have governance, we can change the rules. Immutable law with Bitcoin, you can't change the rules. Now, sure, they could try, like in the block size wars, right? They could try to change the rules. And we saw what would happen, right? They tried to change the rules and the chain split, and we got Bitcoin Cash, which does have bigger blocks. And then the market decided that we don't want bigger blocks, and now Bitcoin Cash is worthless. And so I guess that's what it means. And also, with Bitcoin, even if they do change the rules like Taproot, for example, I don't have to opt into that. My node can continue to operate perfect without running Taproot.
Right. So my question is more like, was there a correlation to actual state law that you see there between Bitcoin, something we could implement? Or
well, sure. So I mean, back to as I mentioned, the Constitution. So the Constitution, what the left, sorry, Q, what the progressives try to tell you is the Constitution is a living, breathing document, and it was designed to be updated. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The document was designed to be rigid, and the document was designed to keep the government in check. And so it was supposed to be kind of immutable law. It was written in a way that these rules shall not be infringed. That's what it said. Like, shall not be infringed. That's immutable law, right? But of course, when you have men that control that, then they start to change the rules. But with Bitcoin, they can't do that. And so I guess that's what immutable law means. Nobody can go and arbitrarily change those rules, change those laws, like put a honking thing in. So to your question, I guess we don't have that in politics today because we're ruled by men, not by law.
Interesting. I guess I'm just a bit confused. Because we'll always need a law that can evolve to keep up with new technology and other updates and just kind of like problems we run into as a society. So I just
do we though? Do we really?
Do
we really
like,
need?
Let me walk that back.
We always need new laws.
I don't think we always need it. I don't think we need 3,000 different gun laws for every state. But I think we'll always have it. I mean, unless you're proposing like total anarchy, I don't see how people can just, like, the Constitution is not going to work for today's society. Like, you can't just only have the Constitution and run a society based on that.
Why is that? Like, give me an example of why the Constitution wouldn't work today.
I mean, just look at how much like conflict arises from it already. Why wouldn't we run on that system, or why aren't there experiments like places where we only have the Constitution? If that were the case, they found a need to.
Well, we did for 250 years.
Okay,
it's worked great. It's worked great. It's birthed the greatest nation in the history of the world. It's brought more people out of poverty than any time period or country in the history of the whole world. More peace, more prosperity than any experiment in the whole world.
I'm not sure how to verify that, but did not more laws emerge in that time, or they only had the one document for 200 years? Because that doesn't.
Well, it's still just the one document. Now there's thousands of pages of regulations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was the Bill of Rights that failed before that. There were attempts at this, and I think to your point, Mark, the laws are always arbitrary. They're based on whoever has control at that time, determining what they see fit or what.
But they shouldn't be. But they shouldn't be.
I agree with that. But on occasion, and I think this is where some of the better laws that have helped push society forward stem from, are when there are uprisings, when there are the masses thinking for themselves and saying, hey, we don't want this. We need a change. And there's always pushback. Like the easiest.
I think we need rules. We need laws. I'm 100% like Jordan Peterson says, let's play a game. You guys like to play a game? You want to play a game? Okay, Q, you go first.
Yeah, that's the game, Q. You have to make
we
the
don't know what
first
to do.
move.
There's no structure, right? There's no structure.
Yeah,
There's no rules.
yeah.
So we need a set of structures and rules to play within. So like, I'm not saying we don't need it, but what we do need is we need it to be very wide and we need to be very general. So we can interpret those into our own lives and we can be an individual based off of that. What happens today is now we have all these rules. And I think this is what you guys are saying. So we have these uprisings or whatever. So now we have rules and laws that are trying to take the place of morality. We used to have moral people. We used to know that thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal. But today, nobody abides by those things anymore. We treat each other horribly. Society is broken down.
If you murdered someone 200 years ago, no one would know. I mean, you're often
No one
living
would
in
know,
the
but it was still
woods.
not
Like,
accepted. It was still not accepted. It was still
sure. But
illegal.
I don't think we were different people just because we had a constitution back then. What I'm saying is, these laws do exist, and I think they're part of the reason society is where it is today. I don't see societies rising out of lawless, regulationless lands. I'm not advocating for more regulation by any means.
I never said lawless. I said we do need laws and we do need rules, and so we need those guidelines. I'm 100% in agreement. I just think they need to be more simple and more general, so it allows us to plan our lives within those set of laws, as opposed to trying to regulate every single area of your life. For example, Q's up in the Bay Area. Q,
LA.
You're in LA. Oh, you said Bay Area before. Oh, Bay Area of LA. Sorry. Okay, so whatever. LA, even the same. So, if you wanted to build a shed in your backyard, if you even own a home, what would that entail? You would have to probably spend a year going through cities to get permits, to get plans, to get structures, to run it through this association and that association, like it to build a shed. Like I can't build a shed on my own freaking property. Like to open up an ice cream shop in LA, it's impossible. Like it would cost you so much money and take so much time. You could never make the money back on an ice cream shop. Like we don't need that level of laws and regulations. So the question is, at what level? Again, back to the spectrum. At what spectrum do we need them? I'm not an anarchist. I don't believe that a completely lawless anarchist world is good. We need a level of trust in society. I don't need someone to test my drink every time to make sure there's no poison in it or whatever, right? We need trust. And so I'm not advocating for that. But we need laws and rules, but they should be much simpler, much less invasive, and allow us some leeway to direct our lives as opposed to trying to regulate direct actions and morality out of them.
I hear you. I think we agree on that. Thank you for clarifying and walking me through that. I just got a little sidetracked there.
Yeah, it's at what spectrum, right? So, for example, right. The freedom of speech, like, well, people shouldn't be able to say whatever they want, right? Okay, well, then who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? And where is that line? And who's to say that line doesn't change? Right? Like, so no, then I would just say that people should be allowed to say whatever they want to say. I don't have to listen to it. And as a matter of fact, if someone's saying some crazy wacko stuff, we should probably know about that so we know who that person is, right? Like good ideas win in the open market because they're good ideas. Censorship doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, censorship only breaks down trust, right? Back to this kind of societal question of freedom of speech. So while I get it, I might say something that you might not like. You don't have to listen to it. Right. And if you take away my ability to say something, you're also taking away someone's ability to hear it. So you're not just censoring me. Now you're censoring everybody else as well. And so, on a freedom of speech issue, for example, dude, you don't have to listen to Joe Rogan if you don't want to. Like you have to download the friggin' app and listen to him. Don't download the app, right? Like,
yeah, it seems most people haven't listened at all either. Most of the people out crying, I've guaranteed, have not listened to more than 5 minutes.
My favorite example of this is the Alex Jones episode that came out after the election. Almost the entire conversation was over censorship. And then within days of it being dropped, Spotify employees turn around and they're like, we need to censor this. Like it needs to be taken off of our platform. Like perfect case study of you clearly did not listen to the conversation because the whole conversation was do not censor us. And to Rogan's credit, spent the whole time fact checking any outlandish claim that Jones would make. Literally would be like, stop, we're gonna fact check this so that people don't get up in arms over this.
Yeah.
Mark.
And it's just one guy's opinion. And if you don't want to listen to it, don't listen to it kind of a thing. You mentioned some of the things about religion and earlier on. Like anything, there's big misconceptions about everything. In the Bible, they asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment out of all the commandments? What are the greatest commandments? What's the greatest one, the most important one in the entire Bible? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. There's nothing in there about going to kill people or hey, if these people don't agree with you or you don't like these people. No, it was love your neighbor more than yourself, right? And so the reason why I say that is I believe in that, and I'm not for like saying mean things to people. I've never one time tweeted "Have fun staying poor," ever. I don't tweet that. I'll always try to give an honest, intelligent answer if somebody asks, because I have an intelligent answer to give, right? And so I'm not an advocate for saying mean things to people or calling people names or saying snarky things. Like, I'm not an advocate for that. I don't think that's right. But at the same time, I don't think that we should take people's ability away to say that either. But again, that's that wide berth kind of a thing, right? Set the rules and then just let people kind of move within them.
Yeah, I mean, what you've shared with us today, it's made a ton of sense to, I think, both of us. I hope those who have been watching and listening have taken away even just one or two nuggets of the countless that you've shared with us, Mark. I could keep talking to you forever. Unfortunately, we do have another segment coming up, but anytime you want, you are welcome back, and we can hash anything out. Just a reminder for those just now tuning in, make sure you pop over. What was the website for Uncommunist Manifesto?
Uncommunist.com.
Go check out the book that Mark Moss has coming out with Alex Svetsky, Uncommunist Manifesto. Be sure to buy your tickets to Bitcoin 22. Mark will be there. Svetsky will be there. Alex, myself, and our producer, Chris, is also use code YTMAG. Mark, where can our viewers find you? I know you have YouTube, Twitter.
Yeah. So go check out that book on communist.com. Otherwise, I'm on, you can go to my website, onemarkmoss.com. This is the number one, and I have all my stuff linked there. But yeah, I make a couple of videos a week on YouTube talking about they don't all look like Bitcoin videos because if you're already a Bitcoiner, you can listen to what Bitcoin did, or Stefan Livera's podcast. I'm more looking at different problems. So like, hey, let's look at inflation, and then, oh, Bitcoin can fix that. Like, let's look at BlackRock buying up all the single family homes. Oh, and Bitcoin fixes that, right? So I'm more looking at problems that most people can relate to. I would say I'm more of a hunter than a farmer. So I make a couple of videos a week trying to change the way you think about money on YouTube. And then I have a nationally syndicated radio show and podcast. And you can just search Mark Moss radio show or podcast and find that as well.
Awesome.
And of course, I'm way too active on Twitter. I should probably not be on Twitter as much, and that's just the number one Mark Moss as well.
Make sure you give him a follow. It's a great follow on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll shoot all your links into the chat. Mark, thanks for coming. I feel like I never have enough time to talk to guests, but I was especially interested in this conversation. It's great to listen to you. Would love to have you on again soon. You're welcome back anytime, man.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, care,
guys.
Man.
We're going to break for a quick commercial break, and then we will be back to talk with Ansel and have our episode of Fedwatch.
are back, guys. That was a great interview with Mark Moss. Definitely could spend a lot more time listening to him talk and you know, questioning some things here and there. I thought that was a very fruitful discussion on Bitcoin and just the United States in general. Next up, we've got Fedwatch with Ansel. Very excited to have Ansel with us today. But first, I just wanted to take a moment to say you guys should get your Bitcoin 2022 tickets. If you're looking for work in the Bitcoin space, there's no better place than Miami, Florida, April 6th through 9th. Everyone on the show is going to be there. It's going to be amazing art gallery that you guys can actually be a part of if you check out my Twitter page. There's going to be like art for plebs. There's going to be ways to use Lightning. There's going to be ways to earn Bitcoin through gaming. There's just so many different ways to interact with Bitcoin at this conference that you never even thought of before. So I can't emphasize enough. Get 10% off your tickets, which is the biggest discount out there right now. Promo code YTMAG, and we'd love to see you there and you know, hang out a little bit as well. So go get your tickets to Bitcoin 2022 today. And now, without further ado, here is Ansel Lindner.
What's up, guys? Great conversation with Mark. All right, let's get. Go ahead.
Go.
All right, yeah. So yeah, let's get on to Fedwatch. So my name is Ansel Lindner. This is Fedwatch, and if you guys don't know about the show, what we do is we take a deep dive into central bank news, current events, try to find out where Bitcoin can replace or replicate or work into the current system. So that's what we do here on the show. We did just release a new episode that we didn't record live, so you guys might not know about it. It was Fedwatch episode number 80. It was just a friendly Twitter conversation with on inflation and deflation. And Alex Gladstein was on, Joe Carlaseri, Jay Gould, Matthew Pines, myself, and a few others. So that was a good conversation. You guys should check that out. But that's all the admin notes up front. So let's get into today's episode. I'm going to go over some ECB stuff with credit spreads, their CPI, press conference that they had last week when they were talking about their policies. And then not much news out of the Fed this week. Everyone's kind of waiting for CPI print to come out. That always comes out on the 10th, where the ECB comes out, you know, a week earlier than that. So lots more to talk about with the ECB. And the kind of boring central bank that we don't really talk too much about is Japan. And so we're going to give a quick update on Japan and then get into some Bitcoin news. There's some in the lending sphere. If we're going to keep this on a credit spread type of show, we can talk about BlockFi. There's some maybe a scandal brewing at BlockFi. We don't know, but going to cover some of that news. And maybe we can interact with the chat at the end, take some questions, and maybe talk about the most recent U.S. government seizure of the Bitfinex stuff, if we have time for that at the end. Okay, ECB, their inflation in January hit 5.1%. That's up from 5% in December. And that is another record for the euro era. So since 1999 with the euro, that is another record high inflation mark. Don't forget, we need to take this in context of the energy crisis. So some places in Europe are seeing a 10x increase in their energy costs, and that can trickle down into the rest of the prices in the economy. So 5.1%, even though it is much higher than forecast, they forecasted at 4.4%. So this was a surprise to the upside. In context of the energy crisis and supply shortages, it's not like it's 10%, okay? It's within kind of where we have rationally been in the last few months. So it's not crazy. And the rate of change is declining. So going from 5% just to 5.1%, you know, that's a very small increase month on month. All right, getting into the main news is the press conference from last week, where the president of the ECB, Christine Lagarde, who previously served at the IMF and got in some trouble. She got actually convicted of financial fraud, but they thought, oh, let's just put her as the president of the ECB. We have a little snippet to play. We'll play that at the end of my intro here to this. But I wanted to give my overall impressions of the press conference and compare that with the Fed, because, you know, this is a central bank show. So what I got from or what I usually get from the ECB press conferences is that it's much more staged. It's much more highly produced. They're on a modern soundstage with modern podiums. They even have an MC that like fields questions from the audience and directs who's going to ask the next question. So it's like much more highly produced. And that overall gives me this impression that it's more of a political machine. Their policies actually speak to that too. But so when Christine Lagarde opens up, you know, she makes sure to touch on all the special interest groups. You have climate, you have minority stuff, you have big business, and it's almost as like she's going through a checklist. And so to me, that's a much more political way, much more political process of how to approach policy. Now, comparing that to the Fed, Jerome Powell misspeaks, and a few times when I listen to him, I'm actually like, ooh, that might not have been the best way to say that. You might be upsetting some people, but he doesn't care. He's not out there to, I think, be as much of a showman as Christine Lagarde is. And the Fed is fiercely guarding their political independence. Now, I recently, it hasn't been published yet. I hope it gets published soon for Bitcoin Magazine, a breakdown of Raskin. This is Sarah Bloom Raskin. She's a nominee to be vice chair at the Fed. She recently was in front of the Senate Banking Committee, and the main questions for her were about the independence of the Fed. Is she going to bring her progressive views into the Fed? So the independence of the Fed is fiercely guarded, where it doesn't seem to be that way with the ECB. Anyway, okay, enough of the intro. Let's just play this clip. It is the first Q&A question about inflation. So do we have that queued up?
Oh, I was on. You guys are saying you couldn't hear it?
All right. Well, how about I'll just put it in the show notes, a link to that. It's a 2-minute clip. And I just wanted you guys to get exposure to how she sounds and how the ECB kind of sounds, checking those boxes, those political boxes. But I'll also link to the longer version so you guys can see the whole thing if you are like me and you want to see what the central bank is actually saying. Okay, what else did she say in that longer press conference? Purchases they're going to let purchases run off. So they do QE differently than the Fed, where the Fed would do 120 billion a month open-ended until they changed. Well, the ECB has like a set budget and a set time frame, and it just ends when that program runs out unless they extend it. And so that she said they're not going to extend it, and so their taper will end March into April timeframe, similar to the Fed. She also would not say that they aren't going to raise rates in 2022. If you rewind the clock to December, she said, "Oh, we will not raise rates in 2022." Well, she has been pressed on that, and she wouldn't say that again. She didn't say they would raise rates, but she wouldn't deny that they were going to raise rates. So that kind of was a surprise to the market. And we've seen some, reaction to that specific part where she wouldn't deny raising rates. I will link to multiple stories in the show notes for people. So you guys can read up on it. When I do research on central banks and current events going on central bank, I get multiple news sources. So I've linked to 2 or 3 different news sources on this exact ECB press conference. So you guys can kind of make up your own minds once you read a couple different news articles about it. But the big story is the credit spreads. So I'm not an expert in credit default swaps and credit spreads like that, but like Greg Foss, who we've had on the show before, but I do have a basic understanding of it. And so let me just explain what's going on. Over the last couple of weeks, certain countries in the Eurozone, their CDS, the credit default swap rates are spiking. So it's signaling that there is some sort of higher sovereign risk for those countries. And these would be the traditional pigs. You have Italy, Spain, Greece. Those are the 3 that I looked at this morning. They have been spiking. Now, when you look at credit default swaps too, in Europe, it's interesting because France or Germany will have a different rate than, say, Italy. And you can start comparing these spreads amongst countries. And when they compare these spreads amongst countries, they call this a redenomination risk. There was some scholarship going on back during the first European debt crisis about this redenomination risk. And what they say is that this is like, okay, so you hold Italian bonds and the spreads are increasing and it's getting risky. You need to redenominate out of Italian government bonds into German bunds. Okay, so this is what is the spread in those rates if you redenominate your risk into another ECB country. They've likened this to the chance that a country will actually drop the euro or leave the Eurozone. These are spiking as well for Italy and Greece, once again, Spain. And what I want to point out is that these really started spiking when Bitcoin bottomed. So Bitcoin bottomed and the price has gone up about 35%, right along with this redenomination risk spiking in Europe. So when a large investor or one of these large financial entities are looking to redenominate the risk into another country, they'll probably be looking to do some of that into Bitcoin. If they have to move 10 billion, redenominate 10 billion, maybe they put $500 million or 1 billion into Bitcoin, gold, those types of plays. So I think this is a very interesting correlation over the last couple of weeks for Bitcoin. And I will be following it very closely in coming weeks. And hopefully I can report that I found something special about Bitcoin and how it interacts with the financial system. So that's all for the ECB. Do you guys have any questions or comments on that stuff, or should I keep rolling? All right, keep rolling. Bank of Japan is the next up. And yeah, like I said in the intro, this is kind of the boring central bank. They have been at 0% growth, roughly 0% inflation, 0% interest rates for 30 years. And so nobody really wants to talk about too much about Japan. But very recently, their 10-year yields have started creeping up. So right now, currently, they're sitting above 0.2%, roughly 21 basis points is what their 10-year yield is at. And this is still within their monetary policy. So what they have done is they've entered into yield curve control. And they said they won't intervene unless the interest rate on the 10-year gets below negative 25 basis points or above positive 25 basis points. That's their window. As long as their 10-year yield is within that, they're not going to intervene or change their monetary policy. Well, this is the highest that it's been towards the upper bound. So a lot of people are talking about, will Japan actually defend it? Will they come in and buy unlimited amounts of JGBs, the Japanese government bonds, to keep rates lower? We don't know, but that is creeping, and it looks like interest rates are spiking in Japan, spiking up to 0.2%. Another thing I have here is a story about inflation. And I was going to share my screen, but I think I'm just going to read this off. It's from the Nikkei Asia. And the headline is Japan and Inflation, What a Corn Snack Says About Rising Prices. Now, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's umaibo, which are sticks of airy puffed corn that come in a variety of flavors. In April will cost 12 yen a piece before tax, an increase of 2 yen. Umaibo, the name means delicious stick, went on sale in 1979. It's a new phenomenon. Japan's core consumer price index, excluding fresh foods, in 2021 fell by 0.2%. But the Japanese central bank has not been even close to its 2% target since 1992. Umaibo, for example, has been selling for 10 yen for more than 4 decades. So this is a snack treat that's been selling for roughly 10 cents for 4 decades. And this is the first time they're going to be raising prices up to 12 yen. So people are saying, oh my God, maybe Japan has some inflation. Prime Minister Kishida expects unions to win wage increases of more than 3% during this year's annual spring labor offensive negotiations. Despite the Prime Minister's encouragement, however, this will not be easy to accomplish. According to the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare, Japan's wages last year only rose by 1.86%. The country has not achieved a 3% wage increase since 1994. During a news conference on January 18th, Bank of Japan Governor Kuroda stressed that prices are not steadily rising towards 2%. Rather, he said, temporary factors such as resources becoming more costly were pushing prices up. So all of that to be said, I've said this before on the show and I'll say it again, is that if you look at balance sheets, central bank balance sheets compared to GDP, Japan is the highest. It's by far the most profligate central bank when you compare it to GDP, yet their inflation is 0 for 30 or 40 years and they can't get off 0. Then if you look at the number 2 most profligate central bank, which would be the ECB, they have 5% inflation. And then the Fed, actually, when you compare the Fed to these other 2 central banks, the Fed looks tame, yet we have 7% inflation here, or 7% CPI inflation. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's exactly backwards of what you would expect if you're thinking that QE and central bank balance sheets are money printing. So that's all I have for that before I go into Bitcoin. Do you guys have any questions on macro, on Europe, Japan, or any of those types of things?
I have a quick question on Japan. When we see this slowly happening, and we know that they are tied very closely to our equities markets, is there any news coming out about what decisions are being made by our Fed and our government that are impacting their decision making?
Most central banks do talk about US policy or a Fed policy. So yeah, they consider that. But Japan seems to be in its own bubble, right? They have been at 0 for 30 years. And the US has been majorly printing during that, quote unquote printing has been very tight during that time, and it hasn't really affected Japan at all. So in regards to Japan, I would say no. Now, one news item, I did see some lowering of tariffs between the US and Japan, specifically on steel, which is a big issue or a big product. So there is some of those things that could affect Japan more than what the Fed does, is what the tariffs are from the United States. So I didn't look into that very closely, but yeah, there's some of those things that tie our economies together. But the Fed policy, I don't think is really one of them. All right, let's go into Bitcoin. So one of my things I've been saying about Bitcoin recently is that Bitcoin needs to develop a lending market. It needs to be, have its own credit market and work its way into the legacy credit market somehow, either replicating certain things or replacing certain things to become, to take that next step into being a global player, a global reserve currency. So this kind of fits along in those lines. One of the big players in the Bitcoin lending market is BlockFi, and there has been some trouble recently. I'm going to share my screen for this actually. Let me make sure I'm on the right thing before I share. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that. This is from BlockFi's subreddit. And here's a guy that came out 3 days ago and said, I took out a loan for 300,000 and put 600K worth of Bitcoin as collateral. Market kept going down, so I kept posting collateral as needed to keep the loan healthy. I got an email saying that the loan was being called back because of, quote, indirect exposure to a mixing service, end quote. I appealed the decision because I bought the Bitcoin back in May of 2020 and kept it on my Trezor the entire time. However, since I didn't buy it on an exchange and the person before me mixed it, I get absolutely screwed. So this is, a growing concern about BlockFi and Celsius. I think these are two related lending services. They are starting to call back loans due to mixing in the past, taint from the recent past. Who knows how many steps back they go? There's been, in the history of Bitcoin since I've been around, there's been talk about this in the past where they would go back 3 or 4 hops like Coinbase or others. So we'll see how this develops, but it looks like right now BlockFi is actively chasing people away and screwing people over. When this guy took out a $300,000 loan and he bought a house or he did something with it and he can't instantly get that back, right? So he's been pretty screwed. Another related story here is the BlockFi has increased their minimum withdrawal. And I thought this was just simply outrageous. So down here at the bottom, Brandon_BlockFi, he's the community manager. He says that they've raised their US based client withdrawal to a minimum of 50,000 US and foreigner withdrawal minimum to 5,000 US. Now 50,000 US, that is extremely outrageous, especially considering that their tier 1 accounts go only up to 1/10 of a Bitcoin. So you get 1/10 of a Bitcoin for 4.5% APY. To get to that $50,000 minimum, you're well into the tier 3 here, getting only 0.1% APY. I mean, it is ridiculously low. They're screwing their people over by closing their loans or calling in their loans, and they've dropped their APY and their lending or their interest rates way down. So I think something fishy is happening over there at BlockFi, and I just want to make people aware of it. There are alternatives out there like Ledin, who is a friend of Bitcoin Magazine. I know has been the sponsor of Fedwatch in the past. They have better APY up to half a Bitcoin at 6.25% and over half a Bitcoin at 2.25%. So much better terms there, as well as no, news, no scandal out there for how they've been treating customers. And another alternative is HODL HODL. This is a decentralized exchange where you can lend and borrow. So it's a little bit more risky, but you can find matches for what you are needing to borrow or to lend. So that was it. That is it from me, guys. Opening the floor up to the chat for any questions, comments, concerns.
I want to talk a little bit about, the predatory nature, if you will, of BlockFi's lending program. I'm just going to blatantly say that because from what facts you presented and what was described as far as what's being done, it seems akin to me putting my conspiracy theory hat on. Like the notion that, healthcare companies and pharmaceutical companies are focused more on treatment rather than cure. And it's almost a similar thing where it's like this lending company is more focused on how do we essentially get the collateral? What is the easiest way for us to collect on all this collateral that we've collateralized against? and prioritize dinging those accounts versus letting the higher API when we have a more steady and stronger income stream almost come in. There's no regulation in place, but what could be done to prevent this type of action in your mind?
What can be done to stop predatory lending is education, basically education. I mean, short of government regulation, which is always should be a very last resort, if any resort at all. You should never invite regulation into any space. But yeah, I would just say education, big time, and also a free market. Have competition out there, like Ledden or Hodl Hodl. If you promote competition, promote education of what's going on, then I think these problems in the free market will usually take care of themselves relatively quickly. I wanted to add to that story too. I saw that BlockFi was giving away $40 for a sign-up bonus. And I don't know how much you had to deposit, but they were like giving away $40. I'm like, but the minimum withdrawal is 50,000. So who's going to deposit, that money, and where the
$50,000? That doesn't sound right.
Guys, that's less than 1%. That is less than 0.1%. Just context math.
No, but I've used BlockFi. The minimum withdrawal isn't $50,000.
Well, this was I just got done sharing a screenshot of Brandon_BlockFi. He's the community manager at BlockFi. And he said, yeah, that they're raising their withdrawals to US based clients to 50,000 is the minimum.
So that's basically a going out of business proclamation. That's not
a
sustainable business model. Yeah, man, they started cutting the yields on that fast and early. I suspect Fold is going to do the same. Lolly is already doing the same. Those spins are going to be less and less lucky as we go forward.
Let me tell you, as someone who has spent a lot of time on Lolly and a lot of time on Fold, collecting my free sats, I used to get a minimum of 100 sats on Lolly. I actually did get a few like 5,000 stacks. I think I got one that was 10,000 sats. I have not gotten over 100 sats in about 2 months. On Fold, it went from like consistently like a minimum of 25 to 50 to now like I almost always get either 5 or 0. It's programmed that way.
Yeah, they're not giving away free Bitcoin, not a sustainable business model. That being said, we are giving away free Bitcoin on this show. However, we are raking it in with conference tickets, y'all, because you guys keep buying conference tickets. So that's what keeps that train chugging.
We sold a conference ticket on live today.
I don't know. I haven't checked today yet, but we'll figure it out at the end of the show. We can give away some Bitcoin now, though.
Let's throw out some sats.
We give away more sats than you'll get on Lolly or Fold. I'll tell you that. If you're watching on Twitter, get over to the YouTube side of things.
And we have not forgotten about the Twitch fam. We'll make sure to drop a sats code in the Twitch chat as well. But I want to kind of ask you, Ansel, like we're starting to see more lending opportunities come out as far as Bitcoin goes. You see more traditional institutions and new institutions sort of step into this space and give the market an offering that it's been asking for. Where or what do you envision the next iteration of this? We're starting to see it really grow in real estate. Is there a new sector or industry that you would just like to see it pop up in?
I think real estate's a well-matched one. I hope that grows. I think that will grow. I think the higher dollar lending, the more professional financial system is where we're going to see a lot of these things take off because, billionaires can protect themselves better than the average person. And so I think that's going to be most likely where we see more lending activity, and then it will trickle down to the rest of the economy. I mean, it's very, very dangerous to, be lending to somebody on some DeFi platform with no reputation, and they're halfway across the world, like that's just very, very dangerous. But it's less dangerous for the billionaires to do it, because if they're lending to each other, they might even know each other or have other business relationships. So I think that's where we're going to see the first entrance into the space of lending. Oh, and another thing too is, BlockFi, their bread and butter, as far as I understand, was GBTC stuff. Buying the shares at par and then selling them at a premium in the secondary market when they were going to hold it for the lockup period. But now that it's been in a discount for so long, the actual secondary price is below the par value for GBTC. And so that whole business model that BlockFi was built on in the first place is gone. So they've been having to probably pivot on their back end, looking for a place where to find yield to justify these higher APYs that they're giving out, because they were some ridiculously high things at the beginning. Wasn't it like 40% or 50% when they started?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see as more of these sort of equity offerings in public markets get tied into different companies, and how the companies respond, how regulators respond, remains to be seen. Alex, I cut you off. Please ask the question you were about to.
No, I'm good. I didn't have a question. I think we've got Altcoin Daily on deck, ready to join us here in a second. Do we have any last comments for Ansel, from Ansel?
Nope, that's it. Just follow me on Twitter at Ansel Lindner. Check out the Fedwatch podcast feed. It is separate from the YouTube. So like the episode 80 dropped on our podcast feed. You can find that in all podcast apps. Just search for Fedwatch Bitcoin and you'll find us there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ansel.
Peace.
All right. See you later, Ansel. Thanks for joining. Let's go to a quick break while we set up a spaces. Let me just confirm here. We have Aaron and Austin both with us. What's up, guys? Nice to talk to you.
Howdy. What's up? Great to be here.
Hey, are we going to do this on spaces too? Did you guys get my message? Are you down?
We're down. The only thing is we both have Android Samsung. So in the past, when I've done spaces, it like kicks me off sometimes. So whoever is running it might have to keep letting us come on and be speaker, and it might be a little bit choppy in that regard, but we're definitely down to connect if you want.
Okay. I'll leave it up to my producer, Chris. You want to try it, Chris?
He's a champ.
Nice.
Honestly,
Yeah?
shout out Chris,
Okay, cool.
because
Chris, if you see Austin hop on stage in the meantime, pull him up, would you?
Just
all
send a
right.
request.
Awesome. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves? And yeah, we'll get started here.
Sure. Are we live right now?
Yeah, we're live, man. Let's do it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in today. My name's Aaron, one of the co-founders and co-hosts of Altcoin Daily. Psyched to collab with Bitcoin Magazine. I am a Bitcoin Magazine hodler, magazine carrying member.
Love
big
to
fan.
see it.
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about Bitcoin and crypto today. You know, it was important to me. I told these guys before we agreed to this that, you know, originally we were thinking, you know, you guys would take the side of Bitcoin only, and we would take the side of diversifying into altcoins. And, you know, we were saying that, you know, that's not really something that we like promote on our channel personally. We would never say like Bitcoin only is bad or like you must diversify into altcoins. But, you know, we're just happy to talk about the differences because there certainly are plenty. But anyway, psyched to be here. Austin?
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. For those of you listening at home, we had Aaron hold up a copy of the physical print Bitcoin magazine, which is always awesome. Card carrying member. These guys are tried and true, I would assume, Bitcoin holders, but the topic of discussion today, I think mostly will be around like content creation as well as investment strategy and you know, some of the fundamental differences and why the community basically what we can agree on, and then maybe what we don't agree on. It should be pretty fun. Yeah, Austin, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hell yeah. I sent a request for the spaces on Twitter. I'm now a speaker. Howdy, everybody. This is Austin Arnold of Altcoin Daily. First off, love Bitcoin Magazine. Appreciate you having us on. Just to introduce our channel a little bit more for those people that may be new to Altcoin Daily. We started the channel. We started the channel in February 2018. In crypto before that, you know, in the run up of 2017, but we started the channel as just two average guys trying to figure out this cryptocurrency market. So we don't come from a traditional coding background or a traditional finance background. We're just two guys that said, hey, if Bitcoin is for everybody, if cryptocurrency is going to be here in 10 years, surely we can figure it out, and cultivated a like-minded audience to follow. So having said that, we do have a diverse portfolio of Bitcoin and altcoins, but I believe for Aaron too, the majority of the portfolio is Bitcoin. And in our opinion, Bitcoin is the most decentralized, the most censorship resistant, and is our one shot to potentially separate money from state. And those altcoins, obviously way more risk, way more speculation, but they're, you know, they have a place in a different use case than money, in my opinion.
Okay, that was some good definitions off the bat. Do we want to continue into what are the cryptocurrency use cases? I will say I'm biased a little bit. I've had altcoins a long time ago. Bought, traded some, kind of learned about Bitcoin and went all in on Bitcoin. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'm genuinely asking, as I don't really participate in the broader crypto market at all.
Well, I think it's important to note that not only, as Austin said, are we Bitcoin holders, that we're, you know, Bitcoin believers too. And like the ethos of Bitcoin, what it stands for, you know, Bitcoiners are one chance to separate money from state, not the other cryptocurrencies. That's not really something they can do or are focused on. And so we're on the same page with that, you know, it's important to fight for that, if that is something that you believe in. Now, as far as other cryptocurrency use cases, I mean, I think it's also important to say that, you know, maybe if just because there's a use case now that might not be here in a year or 5 years doesn't mean that there isn't, you know, users using it now. I think, you know, maybe the use cases that everybody know are like just the open source dApp platforms, the Ethereums, the alternative layer ones like Solana, Eagle, Polkadot, Cardano, stuff like that. And the you know, what people are using those things for is, you know, things like getting yield with decentralized finance, NFTs, and that kind of stuff.
So one thing that occurs to me is basically you're saying that you can beat the performance of Bitcoin if you're going to take this diversified strategy. Does that ring true to you too?
Yeah, I'd even say you'd probably want to just beat the performance of Bitcoin and Ethereum. But certainly, if you're not outperforming Bitcoin, then you're losing money, right? And also, I think we agree on the fact that in longer periods of time, so not just bull markets and bear markets, historically speaking, things lose value over time versus Bitcoin. That most altcoins are trending down and to the right rather than up and to the right versus Bitcoin. Most of them, not that there can't be strong periods of time where that doesn't happen.
I just wanted to clarify. If you hold Bitcoin, you're not losing money, right? So the idea would be that you can beat the performance if you're going to diversify into other things, that you could beat the performance of simply holding Bitcoin, which we used to say was an average of 200% return per year. Recently, we had a much smaller return on the year to date for Bitcoin. I'm sorry, at the year end price. And so that's probably something closer to, I've heard 150. I don't know, Q, you might have a stat about that, but does that still uh, hold true with your kind of investment strategy? You're outperforming Bitcoin and just people who are just purely holding Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean that's true for me. Austin, what would you say?
I would say that one, diminishing returns should be expected. I mean, we've seen that cycle after cycle for cryptocurrency. Another point is Aaron and I do very much take on the strategy of long-term hodlers, or if anything, cycle traders, meaning that we are in it for the long haul. You know, we're never going to be able to time the bottoms or time the tops, but generally we've seen, you know, the cryptocurrency market go in cycles. And if Bitcoin is going from sub 10,000 now to, over 100,000 someday, or at least it got to 60, whatever, then especially with all the adoption, we are seeing all those headlines with NFTs, with companies jumping in, then, ETH outperforms Bitcoin in a bull market. Always want to cycle your profits into Bitcoin. At least for me, even though I'm in cryptocurrency, I do consider myself a little more risk averse. I want that safety. I want that long term.
And I would also just say that like we follow the market every day. It's what we do for like our jobs. It's what we do in our spare time. And, because of that, we take on like a little bit more risk than maybe like most people in the space would. Like we're getting involved in altcoins because, I mean, that's just the reality. It's more risk, more opportunity, but we're not here to convince anybody that you need to get into altcoins to profit or anything like that. Just getting off zero with Bitcoin and stacking sats on long periods of time is obviously a great way to, save your money and grow your wealth.
So I think my next question would be, I mean, what are the ethical implications of promoting altcoins and cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin, as they all seem to have failed to differentiate themselves as something other than Bitcoin, yet they are something that could survive without Bitcoin. And yeah, I guess that's the full question. Does it bother you at all? Some of these kind of like affinity scam cryptos, how do you differentiate?
I would say that like we're watching the market work itself out in real time. So many of these projects that were around in 2017, 2018 are not here. While Bitcoin has sort of solidified itself as the use case of money, store value, we're waiting and watching and seeing if these DApp platforms can work itself out and how decentralized they need to be, what the consensus, what the tokenomics of them are going to be. I think like a big point of contention between people is the word DeFi, or decentralized finance. To me, it's the revolution is more automated finance, meaning, we can have some of these protocols without, the need to ask a third party to verify or censor or approve, these transactions, whether it's social media or whatever. Now, of course, the trade-off is that they're going to have to be more centralized compared to Bitcoin if you want that throughput. There was an interesting story that we interviewed Kevin Smith, the director of Clerks, on our channel last year, and he said something really interesting, that he's an artist, he's a filmmaker. Bitcoin and anything finance related never really spoke to him. Like he heard about, oh, it's new money changing the world, but he didn't really care. It didn't speak to him specifically. When he heard about NFTs, and you could have, for example, if you buy a shirt at a concert, maybe Rolling Stones are touring, you buy that shirt, you're gonna wear it a couple times a year. 3 to 5 friends every time you wear it are gonna see it, as opposed to some sort of verifiable ownership thing that you post online. Man, that's what you want people to see. That's where your friends are. You want to share it with your community. You want people to see it. And while finance never really spoke to him, it's the thought of verifiable ownership or these Web3 quote unquote things online. That's what he cares about.
Just to slow down a little bit, when you own an NFT, you don't own anything exclusively insofar as you can keep that data private, right? Data is by definition copyable. There's no, like, I totally agree with the statement. Like, NFTs are a solution to like a problem that hasn't been invented yet. They don't, or never will. I don't know what they do for anyone. So to me, that's more of, I'm not saying it doesn't have a right to exist. No one can say that. They're here, but I don't know for how long. I don't know why. I don't know why they need a blockchain, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I just don't understand what problem they solve.
Yeah. The way I think about it is, like when the internet was coming to fruition in the 90s, when it was getting popular, that was a technological revolution that was looking for a problem to solve. There were a lot of bad ideas that the internet was trying to solve, and eventually found ones that had product market fit. As far as NFTs go, I agree with you. They're just a loose serial number attached to a JPEG. Now, that being said, I don't think the people buying NFTs necessarily care. And I think it's the artists or the creators who are going, hey, this is the NFT project that I'm, focused on and working on. Be part of my community. This is how you're in the community. I think a lot of people like that. Now, and there is like plenty of centralized aspects about it, but like people, I don't think people mind that. People are into that, and maybe that means the artist won't continue working on it in the future, and that's a risk. Now, to answer the bigger question, what's the ethical responsibility? Obviously, I agree with you. You don't want to promote affinity scams. There's tons of bad ideas in cryptocurrency, and even a whole spectrum in between bad ideas and good ideas, where maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's something that could legitimately work, but the team can't execute. And I guess just finally, the way I think about it is that this is, what we do is like, we just talk about what's going on. PayPal lists and sells Ethereum. Visa is working with Ethereum. Disney is, getting into NFTs, whatever it is. I think of us as kind of like Skip Bayless, like your favorite sports commentators. They're just talking about what's going on. Now, you wouldn't necessarily make a sports bet based on what Skip Bayless has to say. But we're just talking about what's going on.
I don't mean to be that guy. I don't mean to be that guy, Aaron, but the fact that you said Skip Bayless in the same sentence as favorite sports broadcaster, a little bit of judgment coming your way right now. But to bring it back,
love to hate on Skip Bayless.
Exactly. Hey man, if you're gonna say outlandish things for the sake of getting me upset, I'm gonna hate on you for saying said outlandish things. But
I'm a Shannon Sharp guy.
Fair. I'm a Denver Bronco fan myself, so I'm with it. But I want to specifically actually stay on this topic for a brief second, and then I want to go back to something that you had actually mentioned earlier, Austin, about your guys' sort of strategy and approach to just the broader crypto markets, specifically on the NFT front. Both of you guys, Alex and Aaron, have talked about, there's no real problem it is solving. It's just a technology that's been invented. I'm of the side, and I'm a big believer that it will essentially help democratize sporting events and ticketed events in a way that we haven't seen before. We see dynamic pricing, essentially price me out of any Lakers game I want to go to, whether it's a home game or an away game. You also mentioned a little bit about Disney. They started releasing exclusive Spider-Man content that is either just images or short comic strip series strictly as NFTs. I've run the numbers in my head, and I will make it very easy for everyone to digest. If they were to release a 10 million limited release of the next Marvel movie, whatever they want it to be, and they price that at just $50 at the original baked in price, 10 million movie tickets is not a lot of movie tickets to realistically sell. That's $100 million box office weekend. That's about a third of what Spider-Man did opening weekend. So it's a very realistic
Right.
thing.
No one's arguing that they're not lucrative.
No,
The
but
the the argument is that they're not fundamentally useful technology, and most of the people that are using them don't understand that. They think what they have is something of valuable that's not completely replicatable and centralized.
I'm on your side.
Okay.
I want to get to the end of my very long point, as I like to make very long questions and points. But to Alex's point, we watch, and we were just talking about this with Mark Moss, like BitTorrent, and I come from the LimeWire generation. What is going to stop people from, oh, my friend just got the new Spider-Man movie, let's rip it so that we could all have it. I don't need to spend 50 or whatever this next iteration of the price is going to be. So how are we going to stop that? Because the internet sometimes just dictates, hey, we want access to information, we want access to content, and if you want to price us out of it, we will turn around and we'll right click and save. So how do we prevent that from happening?
Oh yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
you will be able to prevent that. I think that is just something that happens, the right click and savers. And I think everybody in the NFT community like knows about that. Everybody, even people just getting involved, knows that if they buy an NFT, it can be right clicked and saved. And some people think of that as free advertisement for their NFTs or whatever. I mean, I take a neutral approach. We just like have to be real with, that's what's going on. We just like meet people where they're at. People want to talk about Ethereum. People want to talk about NFTs, and there's certainly plenty of information that's going on about those.
And to add on to that, just the possibility that is there with NFTs and movie tickets, for example, like Spider-Man obviously has a huge community. Many diehard Marvel people, they want to be able to say, I saw Spider-Man Homecoming in the first week, opening night, I was there. Like people from music festivals
How does NFTs help them do that? How does that promote that at all? I don't understand.
Yeah, let me get to it. It's like people from music festivals, a long time ago, still have their original tickets of, I was there. I showed up to this, event in the 60s. All these bands played. People like ownership. And if you believe that the digital world if the world's only getting more digital, people want that ownership online. Now, let me paint this picture, Alex. As all these movie studios get in the boom, all these movie studios get in, they have video game components, they have all these different media components. The thought of NFTs are, man, if I have some verifiable ownership that I was there on opening weekend, man, maybe that gets me access to a certain skin on a video game for Spider-Man that only the 10,000, 100,000 people have. Maybe that skin gets me a special thing.
This is artificial scarcity. You're assuming that this is in fact ownership when it's not. There is no ownership outside of Bitcoin. You have nothing that can't be debased outside of Bitcoin. Nothing. Not your land, not your real estate, not your car, not your money, your fiat money. There's nothing outside of Bitcoin that can't be debased. Gold.
NFTs can be
None of that's
debased.
Absolutely, 100%. So you don't have proof of ownership. You have proof of ownership insofar as a small niche group of people are willing to kind of nod soberly and say like, yeah, that's what you got. Well, they walk away with your money.
I agree with you, Alex. If you put it in comparison to Bitcoin, nothing is more verifiable. Nothing is more censorship resistant than Bitcoin. And then it's just a spectrum on top of that. So we're just watching the free market work out in real time. Will this work? Will it not? I'm not sure. I just know that is the value prop that all these movie studios or these notable people in this space, that's what people are hoping for. And we're watching it work out in real time.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see, man. So like one of my other big questions is, I mean, you guys very clearly understand I wouldn't say arguments for both sides, but the value proposition not only of Bitcoin, but what other people are seeing in these cryptos. How do you decide to then go and create crypto content? Do you find this kind of speculative gambling to be a more important cause, or is it simply more interesting to you than the Bitcoin space, or how did that happen?
Well, we like to meet people where they're at. Ours is a cryptocurrency channel, and we'll talk about whatever people want to talk, whatever's making news in cryptocurrency, we'll talk about. So that's pretty much how we come up with our content. But let me ask you a question, Alex, because I noticed sometimes when there is a story that involves both Bitcoin and Ethereum, take the news of the other day from KPMG, that auditing firm in Canada put Bitcoin and Ethereum on their balance sheet. I think that, if you were just to report it based on, what actually happened, they put Bitcoin and Ethereum on their balance sheet. But you guys choose to only do Bitcoin. And for me personally, I think, that, makes, people interested in the crypto market seek alternatives like our channel to get the other side of the information. But you guys specifically don't want to, talk about how they put Ethereum on their balance sheet. What is the rationale behind that?
The rationale behind that is we have one mission here, and that's to spread hyper Bitcoinization, and that means not putting people through circuitous routes to ownership and wealth that the crypto and all these other kind of like adjacent markets offer. Instead, we want to show people the door, and that means a beeline to the door. And I think what people realize every year again and again is that news organizations, news aggregators, like there's no journalism itself, just by the act of writing something down or choosing to cover something, there's a bias there, right? And you have to be, and you guys know from what you choose to cover and what you do not, that choice in and of itself causes a bias. And at Bitcoin Magazine, our bias is Bitcoin. We're interested in Bitcoin. We have a lot of heated arguments and discussions about when and where the appropriate time to acknowledge cryptos is. But yeah, you've pointed out absolutely a fact. We will say Bitcoin when we can, Bitcoin and crypto, and without pumping any of these individual other altcoins, because we don't believe those are viable alternatives. I don't believe those are safe investments. I am not really interested in like censoring them per se at all. I mean, I believe in the freedom of speech, but that also is like, hey, this is what we're talking about today. I don't have to acknowledge or talk about these other things. You have to, kind of define your rule set, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, sure, sure. That was just to give you, and that makes sense. That's totally cool. That's why I love Bitcoin Magazine. Tons of great info. That's why I have the magazine, follow the YouTube channel. But to answer your question, why do we make the content that we make, and why do people choose to watch our videos? I think it's because they really want more nuanced information that they don't necessarily get. Whether we're talking about that one specific article about KPMG, where it's like, oh, I heard also Ethereum, I need to go someplace else to find that, or even like a Max Kaiser, who I'm a huge fan of Max Kaiser. The guy's awesome. I'd have a beer with Max Kaiser. But when he paints everything as just it's all shitcoin, it's all just trying to take your money, then people go, okay, well, I'm looking for like some more nuanced information. So let's, I just want to learn a little bit more nuanced information about that, which is, I'm not saying Max Kaiser needs to change. I'd have a beer with the guy. I'm just saying because there is that, everything else is a distraction mentality on some of the most reputable Bitcoin magazines and content creation, then people have to look elsewhere. And that's, we fill that niche in the market.
yeah, absolutely. It's like the exceptions proving the rule, right? Like if you are the signal, then by definition, everything else is something other than signal. So yeah, I get that. I'm just curious how deep do you guys go into the technicals of Bitcoin? I'm wondering if you kind of looked into Bitcoin and somehow found yourself bored or exhausted. Like there's so many exciting things in it to me that I can't see myself being able to process that information in a lifetime. So I'm just wondering if you have the option of kind of promoting somewhat risky or dubious at best assets or securities, and Bitcoin. You know, why take the gamble? Why not just go in on Bitcoin?
Well, Ethereum is not a security, and then everything else is potentially securities. I'm sure there are, you might see many of them be deemed as security. But
Why do
I
you
mean,
say Ethereum's not a security?
is it not? I'm pretty sure the U.S. government has deemed it a commodity like Bitcoin.
Right, but it's subject to debasement, and it's centralized. So
Right. I
it's
was just saying
nothing.
that the
It's
U.S. classification is that it is a
mhm,
commodity at the moment. Now, obviously, it's going through a big
mhm.
change, ETH 2.0, which could perhaps change it. Gary Gensler has made it clear that Bitcoin is very different, and although he said in the past Ethereum is not a security, it could possibly change with the transition. But at the moment, it is a commodity according to the U.S. government, if I understand it correctly.
So you
Sure.
are correct. You are correct in that definition. However, I want to push back on it because, like, we are allowing people who don't understand the technology, and I'm not saying I do by any stretch of the imagination better than others, but I definitely think that I understand it better than almost every member of Congress. And yet we are allowing these people to make these decisions and lay claims of this is a commodity, this is whatever security, so on and so forth. Do you not, though, believe that the definition of Ethereum being considered a commodity by the US government is due in large part to the market cap of it rather than the actual definition of what it is offering? Or do you actually think that it is a viable commodity?
Um, I mean, I see your point when you say that there was a possible expectation of profits. People play that video with Vitalik from back in the day. I understand what you're saying, but I'm just talking about what is the reality right now. So it could change. That's true.
But
But
in this reality right now, like what is it that you define to be as a commodity versus what is it that you define to be as a security? What are the separating factors?
well, I mean, I'd have to look at the definition of a security, like the Howey test,
The
that
Howey
thing.
test. There
If
you
there's
go.
if there's people working and there's an expectation of profit, that is, and there may be one more thing, that's a security.
And just to add on to that, in terms of legal definitions, like Aaron and I, we don't come from a legal background. So obviously, I wouldn't be able to say with any conviction that this is 100% one thing or 100% another. What we do is we just cover what those notable people in office said. We also cover that there was a 70% pre-mine with Ethereum. We also cover that, major Nike is bought Ethereum and is launching stuff in the metaverse. So we're just covering all these different aspects and seeing in real time what the actual reality is as all these things get more history.
Do you see Ethereum as a store of value? Do you see it as something that is like Bitcoin? I see it as something that's completely unlike. Like it's a different
Yeah,
asset class for
totally
sure.
different from Bitcoin. I think we're in agreement that it can never be Bitcoin, and its value prop at this point would have to be separate from Bitcoin. I'm not in the camp of Ethereum is ultrasound money. Ethereum is different. It's the open source DApp platform, and historically speaking, it has not been a store of value, or it's just been like less of a store of value than Bitcoin dropping 90%. So I don't consider it a store of value. And I guess I was going to say, to answer the other question, about I can't remember. We can move forward.
Yeah, I think Q was just asking what your definition of a security was.
I think actually what I wanted to say was, you're just talking about generally, did you get bored with Bitcoin? Like, is there a reason you choose not to cover only Bitcoin? I would say that I certainly didn't get bored of it. I've probably watched more Bitcoin only type content than almost anybody. Maybe not you guys, but definitely, other people. But like TFTC, what Bitcoin did, Stefan Livera, Swan, Signals TV, I've seen tons of them. And I would even say that we have, because we put out a video every day on our channel sometimes too, we have more, and we do cover like the Bitcoin only side sometimes. We have more Bitcoin only content, or the Bitcoin only content on our channel that a Bitcoiner like yourself could look at and go, oh, I approve of that. That seems fair. That seems reliable. Our content, our channel that fits that bill has gotten more views than most Bitcoin only content creators, because a lot of times they release one video a week or one podcast a week. And a lot of people hold Bitcoin and something else, so they want to get that information. But I would say I didn't get I'm not bored of Bitcoin only. It's just just people are interested in all of it. And I've certainly gone down the rabbit hole in a big way. And actually, it's funny because I was kind of like Bitcoin Maximalists back in 2019 and early 2020, and certainly been called a Bitcoin maximalist by tons of altcoiners before. But it's like at the end of 2020, after DeFi summer and just getting into 2021, I mean, it was obvious to me from my, I'm a just regular guy, my normal point of view, just looking at what's going on, PayPal, accepting it, Canada spot Bitcoin ETF and Ethereum ETF. It's just obvious to me that there was going to be, a lot of opportunity before 2021. And there was that opportunity in 2021. And well, this is what I wanted to say earlier, and then I'll let you speak, Q, that, you talk about a lot of times, I think this is very good thing to talk about in the Bitcoin community. Try to get rid of the noise and focus on the signal, and the signal is Bitcoin. But I would argue that there's been a lot of signal from crypto over the past year. And what I mean by that is that PayPal listing Ethereum, I mean, they're so tight with Wall Street. They wouldn't do something like that if it was going to go away in the next year. Canada listing a spot.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you just qualify that? How
Sure.
is PayPal listing? And by the way, I mean, are you allowed to withdraw from PayPal? PayPal doesn't even have Bitcoin, as far as I understand it.
Oh, well, I mean, they did say that they're
They do
going to
have
allow you
Bitcoin.
to withdraw. I think that, that if that didn't go into effect yet, that is something they said. I thought that was already allowed, though. I'm not sure, though.
It is not
Yeah.
yet allowed. However, you are able to
Okay.
purchase Bitcoin and purchase Ethereum. I say it in quotes because,
Right.
as you said, you cannot
Second
yet
order.
withdraw.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
And then there's the Canada spot Ethereum ETF. I mean, again, Canada is one of those countries that is so tight with the global regulators. That's
But how is that signal?
that's
Again,
a little
how
bit
are
of a
either?
signal, because that would say that, they're not viewing these things as, outright scams or bad ideas. They see some sort of value. And if, it's obviously a great thing when a Bitcoin spot ETF gets put into place, or when a big country like a regulator body from that country says, oh, we can do this with Bitcoin. I think for those same reasons, it's good with Ethereum. And then just the final little piece of signal, and I'm not saying these are better than Bitcoin or bigger than Bitcoin signal. I'm just saying it's kind of like a change of the guard, and people are kind of interested in that. I'm sure you guys remember in Bitcoin's first 10-ish years, everything was priced in Bitcoin. You couldn't buy an altcoin without buying Bitcoin first. I would say that's changed a little bit, and that so many things are priced in Ethereum now because people often get out of altcoins and go into Ethereum just because there's, the Ethereum virtual machine is so just, whatever you call it, ubiquitous. And so I would say that's a little bit of a change compared to like 5 years ago, when I'm sure 5 years ago, hey,
Yeah.
everything's priced in Bitcoin, that signal. Well, that's a little
I
bit.
hear you there. Yeah, I think well, again, by definition, my definition of signal, those things would not be signal. In fact, that would be something like a call to action. Like, this is a huge problem that so many people find so much value and are essentially being lied to by, Vitalik and co. I don't think people understand that they are going to get rugged, and that they can be rugged, and that their property is not property. They're not owning anything. So to me, I hear you. That is definitely like a change of guard, but it's like a pretty concerning one from my perspective. I'm interested in Austin and Q's take on this too.
I want to really, really quickly before I sort of dive in and respond a little bit. For those watching or listening in on the Twitter Spaces, please feel free to hop over to YouTube where you can see all of our pretty faces and the different backgrounds we've got. I also just want to highlight. Aaron mentioned, grabbing a drink with Max Kaiser. This is a reality in about 2 months down in Miami. Be sure to get your tickets. Both of you will be in attendance. Use code YTMAG, get 10% off. Come have a drink with any of us down in Miami. But to now go back, I think one of my issues with the idea of everything is being priced in Ethereum right now is, well, I think a large part of that is everything's being built on top of Ethereum. So then you sort of see this natural progression in that direction, but you also see the running joke of, well, the fees are so high. Now you have something like Solana coming out as a Solana killer. But yet again, we have the issue of how many of those tokens were actually pre-mined versus being offered to the public. What are your guys' thoughts, both of you, Austin or Aaron, on just this notion of the pre-mining that happens in these spaces, and then in essence, centralization of these different cryptocurrencies?
I would say that 100%. Like if you want, the use case of Bitcoin is store of value, means of payment. And right now, store of value is the primary use case because nobody wants to spend their Bitcoin. They want to hold their Bitcoin. They would rather spend their US dollars, which are going to lose value. So Bitcoin's use case is hodling it. It's not transacting it, as opposed to these DApp platforms, which, man, in order for them to be successful, they need user growth and they need building on the network, which means they need throughput. Now
I
we're
would
watching those.
I'd push back on saying Bitcoin's use case is not transacting it. I mean, you use the Lightning Network, I'm sure, or you're aware of it.
I think Austin was saying it's just what the people want at this point in time. And you could say this about with all cryptocurrency. They realized how fast this thing could appreciate. As you guys know, Bitcoin's revolutionary. People don't realize how valuable it could be. And because of that, Gresham's law, that it's just not the right fit at this time, although there's plenty of use with the Lightning Network.
I would say
people just generally want to hold. They want something that will hold and appreciate and save.
100%. Alex, that was a great point. It's store of value, means of payment. I guess I was just speaking from me. I'm interested in hodling. I would rather spend, I know we've had Brian Harrington on the channel many times. He talks about the circular economy. It's, different people are using it in different ways. I'm using it as store of value. That's what interests me the most. And I was just sort of putting that in opposition to DApp platform where you need to build. And because of that, there is going to be throughput trade-offs. Now, we like to hear many different voices on our channel. We had Anthony Pompliano on probably like 4 or 5 months ago, and he talked about that, in his opinion, we're just going to watch cycle after cycle after cycle, the users choose throughput and user experience over decentralization. That's his opinion. That's why he likes Bitcoin. And that's a very real possibility. The issue now, and why so much people are using Ethereum, we're seeing the proof of concept. We're seeing a want for all that. We're seeing a want for an automated market maker like a Uniswap, for example. And we don't have to get specific on the value of these specific protocols. I'm just talking about the use case of, man, I don't have to go to a centralized exchange. I can just transact, on this protocol without it. Now people are building
I'm sorry,
on Bitcoin.
which decentralized exchange exists? I've never seen one.
Alex, that is decentralized is the point of contention. I would say more automated, because if you put it in terms of Bitcoin, then it's not going to be as decentralized
or distributed.
I think we could all agree on that. But we're seeing the use, and it is the proof of concept in my mind. And we're just watching how the future unfolds. I want it to be built on Bitcoin, but we just cover, how it's being built right now and what it could mean for the future.
Okay. So my only follow-up to that, I guess, would be, I mean, do you acknowledge that Bitcoin is there for a store of value, but it does great throughput? I mean, you can transact international trade over the Lightning Network seamlessly.
Right? I love the Lightning Network. I think I agree with you.
And just to talk about the broader question again, you mentioned, Ethereum has all these fees. And I mean, I do remember, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum are very different. I do remember, I think might have been like Jameson Lopp or somebody from like 3-4 years ago, when Bitcoin had its, big milestone of like more fees paid on Bitcoin. And then that was the time when Roger Ver was also more in the space. And he was like, I can't believe these Bitcoiners are talking about how great fees are. And then Jameson Lopp and Bitcoiners, well, that means people are using the network. I would say that is, that just means Ethereum is using the network. And then even more than that, and I hate to just generalize all Bitcoiners say this, and because I would hate to like all altcoiners say this, but I mean, it seems to me that, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say, a lot of Bitcoin only people are most interested from an ideological point of view, in that because Bitcoin is the only thing that can separate state from money, that's the only thing they're interested in. And because of that, this is just my opinion, I think this happens sometimes, that sometimes they'll just tend to lean on the side of FUD for everything, or even like move the goalpost. And when I say that, I mean like, well, there was a time that, and I'm talking about 4 years ago, that they said nobody's going to use Ethereum. Look at Tron, nobody's using Tron. And then BSV exploded and, people are using Ethereum. Before that, they were saying, hey, Ethereum is going to be deemed a security by the US government. Now it's not a security at this point. We talked about that already. People were saying that when I remember when Ethereum was like $100, and people on Twitter were saying, hey, you could buy Bitcoin and get a 2x to go back to all-time highs, or Ethereum you could get a 4x. And then at that time, many of the more toxic people were saying, hey, that's a scam. Ethereum's a bad idea. Don't do that. Now, obviously, that turned out survivorship bias. That turned out to be a good idea if you were to do it. Now it's obviously will Ethereum get back to its Bitcoin all-time high price? It just seems to me that Ethereum has like won in culture and usage, whether it be devs or usage or just mainstream acceptance by orders of magnitude compared to where it was 4 years ago. And that's why there's so much interest. But now obviously the goalpost has moved a little bit for, Bitcoiners who said it could never get to this point. Now it's like, well, now it's, you don't want to get
Well,
involved.
when you talk about that goalpost, just realize that I've never said any of those things, and I don't call myself a Bitcoiner or a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm someone who holds Bitcoin, and I think there are a lot of us who holds Bitcoin with the understanding that this can't be taken from me. This can't be debased. This is property. This is ownership. And I would ask, I mean, what do you guys value your time in?
Well, I mean, totally. I didn't mean to put that on you. Like I said, that was just, I think we can agree though that, and like Udi has talked about this in length in many prominent spaces of the toxic Bitcoin culture, which I think is a lot less than what it was in the beginning of 2021. Peter McCormick's talked about it. He's talking about those people, not you guys. And I would never say Bitcoin maximalist. I don't want anybody to feel marginalized. I know some people think of that as a bad word. Bitcoin only. I think everybody.
Yeah, I'm down with it. I'm just I don't know. The Bitcoin maximalism is a very specific use case, and that is to function as something like an immune system, and it does its job well.
Well, I'm a fan of Bitcoin maximalists and being Bitcoin only. I'm not a fan of the toxicity, but more than that, even if I didn't have a cryptocurrency channel, I look as just an enthusiast in the space. I do agree with like things that Udi have said, where it's like the toxicity turns tons of new people away. And you can say it's all going to, they'll learn in the bear market, which is true if, things keep going down and don't go back up. But I personally wouldn't use, some of the rhetoric, the toxic Bitcoin maximalism. I wouldn't use that personally because I think it does turn people away. And even sometimes, some of the things that you care about that are so core to, Bitcoin, sometimes you can say, hey, this is why Ethereum is bad. And then the potential holder of Ethereum will look at that and be like, oh, that is based on what these Bitcoin only people have said, I might get myself some Ethereum. For instance, that, Ethereum has ties to the World Economic Forum or something. If I heard that about a coin, I'd be like, oh, finally, there's maybe a chance that this thing will, be put through by the people in charge, or that, the people who hold Ethereum right now and the people who hold more Ethereum.
Really?
It's just as an investment, not as a great idea for society. I'm not a fan of the World Economic Forum, but just as somebody purely interested in an investment.
Yeah, not quite sure how to respond to that. There's a lot being said. Again, I mean, I still think I'm just a person who holds Bitcoin, advocates for those ideas. I think people get confused between just like, hey, this is a Bitcoin maximalist, and like, this is just an asshole. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that hold Bitcoin on this planet. Not all of them are nice all the time. Before I pass it to Q, sorry, I saw your hand was up, Q. I still just wanted to ask this question to both of you. Like, how do you value your time? What do you value your time in?
Well, what I'm interested in is, building a YouTube channel that has provides people with a lot of value. It's information and entertainment, and I'd like to have people watch my videos. And to do that, I talk about what people want to talk about. For the past year, it's been Ethereum and other alt-ones, and NFTs, which have taken up the conversation. If next year it's Cardano or something else, I would I would pivot and talk about that. For me, and this is
so you value your time based on what is in popular conversation at the time? Well, I'm asking what do you trade your hard work for? Like, what is your end goal? What are you trying to acquire?
I assumed you were talking about like our time with the YouTube channel. I guess, I mean, obviously the goal is to acquire time, right?
And
money equals time.
And to jump off that, like we're Bitcoiners that use alts to stack more Bitcoin, which is a risky play. That's in our Twitter bio. But at the end of the day, the majority of our portfolio isn't Bitcoin. It's what we most believe in and sort of the most clear use case and what's winning. And then all those other ones sort of have to prove it to us. And then we'll cover the news based on that.
So I just want to clarify that. So you value your time in Bitcoin. Do we agree on that?
I would say, yeah, I price my gains. My goal is to accumulate more Bitcoin.
Okay. So when you say winning, what do you mean? Because I don't see these, again, Bitcoin and crypto are not even playing the same game. They're not even in the same like space at all. They don't do similar things at all. Crypto is functionally no different from fiat in that it can be debased and stolen from you.
Yeah, crypto is more similar to fiat or like stocks or like a tech play or something like that. I agree. I'm fine like differentiating those hardcore.
Yeah, they're totally different, and I would never. Yeah, they're totally different. I view alts more as a stock play in the sense that they're more centralized. Now there's an automated component, which is the revolution potentially there, but we're seeing if they'll be here 10 years from now. That's the question.
Q, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm asking this while wearing my shitcoin minimalist hat because I have been deemed sort of the not pure Bitcoiner because I fall under the category of similar to our conversation with Mark Ross. I've had an account blow up in front of me because I was all in on a certain sector, and that was the lesson I learned, and it's something that I never want to learn again. So I personally can never go all in anything. But I want to get a sense from you guys as we develop, expand this conversation and answer it however you are most comfortable. You have mentioned that you guys have Bitcoin exposure, and that is the largest exposure you have. Does this mean it is 50% of your portfolio, or is it a smaller percentage?
Well, here's the crazy thing. I mean, like at times of a hot market, it can go from 75% down to 50% if these altcoins are fluctuating so hard. And obviously, those are paper gains. I would have to check at the moment how it's definitely over 50%. I would have to. Bitcoin and Ethereum are my two biggest holdings together. They probably make up close to 70%. I would think I would just guessing. I would think, and all the tokens that I hold more than $1,000 of are listed below all my YouTube videos for transparency, but I would think it would be like around 50% to 30% Ethereum, but it fluctuates all the time.
Yeah, just to echo that, during bull markets, obviously the altcoins go up and then you reprice in Bitcoin, but it's always at least over 50% in Bitcoin because again, I consider myself a more risk averse investor despite being in crypto.
Both of you have touched on this, and this is sort of where I think my issue with the broader crypto market stems from is there seems to almost be a pattern of recognition where if Bitcoin's price goes up, the broader crypto market will follow suit to some degree. Sometimes it's more volatile and the gains are higher. Sometimes it's less, and Bitcoin does outpace certain tokens. We've seen now over the last, 2 years in theory, or not in theory, Ethereum has grown and has gains larger than Bitcoin's gains have been. I am one of those people who did buy a few tokens at around $200, and I still continue to hold it and reap those rewards, if you will. However, does that sort of connection to Bitcoin not give you pause or concern that maybe ultimately everyone should just be focused on Bitcoin in the same theory of the picks and axes? The people in the gold rush who got rich were not the gold diggers. They were the people who owned the saloons and owned the companies that sold the equipment. So is Bitcoin not in essence similar to that?
I mean, I personally, I get the sense this is how a lot of Bitcoin only people think about it, that Ethereum and altcoins need to die for Bitcoin to reach hyper Bitcoinization and succeed. Now, you didn't say that, and I get the sense maybe you don't think that at all, but like, I don't see, okay, then I'm wrong inferring that. But I don't think that Ethereum and alts need to die for Bitcoin to succeed. And as far as like your picks and axes, Wells Fargo made the most money during the gold rush by selling tools and stuff. I'm not sure exactly how that relates to your point, because I would say like what you guys do is selling picks and axes. What we do is selling picks and axes by like providing informative content. That's just a different thing. That's not like selling the asset itself.
Right. But you guys have sort of shared and touched on the fact that, the market is asking for this content. There is not, you have this Bitcoin exclusive content, but then you guys also go out and find other content or other tokens, if you will, to discuss and share and educate your listeners and viewers on. But do you not feel an obligation to sort of discuss this broader connection where the market just seems to fluctuate with the price of Bitcoin? Or maybe you guys see something else is really the driving force of the fluctuation in prices in the broader crypto market.
I mean, I think we both agree with you in that Bitcoin gives the market strength to a lesser degree, Ethereum. But if Bitcoin's not, and that's just very recent, but if Bitcoin's not going up, then I mean, Bitcoin gives the whole market strength. And I mean, I would say that, and that's definitely something our audience is aware of. And I would say again that, like, I think like a Bitcoin only or Bitcoin centric message that all Bitcoin only people could look at and go, I approve of that. I think that is something I think is correct about the world and about Bitcoin versus crypto. Probably you guys would think. I think we have so much content that is just that combined with other crypto content. But I think our Bitcoin, like that point of view has been presented to our audience so many times. And I think more people see it watching us than some of even the great Bitcoin only podcasts, just because we put out a video every day and we have some of the highest engagement on YouTube. And people come to us for that truthful information or conservative perspective, plus also to find out about what else is going on. And because we talk about that other stuff, more people are seeing the Bitcoin centric stuff.
And just to piggyback off that, and by the way, I keep getting kicked off Spaces, so it's connecting again. So for people, if you can hear me on Spaces, I'll connect very soon. But I totally agree with you, Q or Alex, whoever said it, that the reason that this cryptocurrency market, we see these bull markets for these altcoins for crypto, is because the use case and the adoption of Bitcoin is so clear. And then in those euphoric times or the hype times, that's when all the speculation and the hope for these altcoins happen. And then, you know, the market works itself out. For us specifically, or for me specifically, I should say, we talk about the whole crypto market. And like Aaron said, we want to talk about what's making news. We want to talk about what people are interested in, but I'm also interested in that. I'm not convinced that there won't be a dApp platform, so to speak, that does a totally different use case than Bitcoin, going for something totally different, not as decentralized, but offers more of an automated solution for verifiability or something like that. I'm not convinced
I heartily agree with you there. I actually agree with you there. I think the only I think NFTs and like the whole like crypto kind of space would be better off if they just stopped pretending they need a blockchain and like go actually like fucking make something that people need. I think like the market will be here, it seems like, for a while, whether they do that or not. But I think just from a business perspective, if I was Vitalik Buterin, I'd be like, what do we have this fucking blockchain for? This is a waste of computer processing space. Like, let's drop this and like go make the thing that we're actually somehow getting around to making. You know what I mean? Because it's not Bitcoin. It's never going to be Bitcoin, and you can't bootstrap something into existence which is going to catch it in terms of US dollar price or otherwise in terms of function. But just my 2 cents on that.
You both kind of touch on this, and it's been sort of broadly discussed, but we haven't really directly asked, and I want to present this to you guys. So there was the euphoric rise we felt in 2017. Bitcoin's price hit this all-time high. Now you see the ICO craze, and everyone and their mother thought that they knew the next Bitcoin. And unfortunately, as we all know, the decline in bear market really pushed people out of this space. People felt like they were scammed out of their money. There were so many different offerings in this space. I'm not necessarily saying we are repeating the same things that have happened. My fear, though, is that as we have seen a price contraction, and what direction we go remains to be seen. If I knew, I'd be a billionaire right now, so don't quote me on anything I say. But do you feel as though another hard sell-off and a decline in the broader crypto market, a decline in Bitcoin, could actually serve then set this entire industry back as a result, because everyone is so spread out rather than be focused on, let me learn Bitcoin, let me just learn Ethereum, even if that's what you want, and then expand. It seems like everyone's like, oh no, you got to go to UFO. Oh no, you got to get Cardano or SafeMoon or whatever the bullshit token of the day is, it seems. So
I would say that, and let me unmute on Spaces. I would say that 100% a bear market will happen on any market. And the thing that ruins it, especially if the stock market tanks, it hasn't really, besides 2020, had really a it tanked then, but it hasn't really had a bear market for 10 years. The minute the party's over, so to speak, in terms of the speculation, then those altcoins are going to get drained hardcore. Now, I think the bigger picture, at least for me, what I'm looking at is where are the developers flocking to? Where is actually the user growth? And in those downtimes, even if 98% of those protocols get wiped out because they just couldn't get the users, it's where the developers are going, where the users are going.
And I would say that we're in agreement that something like that probably will happen. The market's going to get way overvalued, just like Bitcoin gets overvalued, then pops back up the next cycle. But even, there's projects that are, quote unquote, a little bit better than the other altcoin projects that are still going to correct 75%. And even if they go on to, go over all-time highs, like at Cardano, who 3 years ago was at 2 cents, way down from its all-time high, which it pumped to in the very beginning of 2018. And then that was one of the ones that survived and went on to, have great returns. I would say the only difference, though, is that we both agree that something like that, if history is any indication, something like that, similar to that, will happen again. The only difference is, there's no problem going Bitcoin only. You guys decide Bitcoin only is the safest, most, I don't have to think about it too much. I agree with that. We go, well, that is true, but how you can, go through that is manage your risk, practice proper money management, understand the risks, understand what you're buying.
I do want to have a discussion and ask you guys for maybe what you look for. I say I come from the finance space. I majored in finance and traded on my own for some time. That's my extent of financial career, if you will. But you touched on just now a little bit this correlation we're seeing with the stock market. The stock market hit an all-time high back in November, a few days after Bitcoin did, and then everything had been crashing for some time. There's claims that a bottom has been reached. What effect does this correlation with the stock market have in your guys' mind on Bitcoin and then the crypto market at large as well, given the fact that we've established this connection between Bitcoin and crypto now?
One of the analysts that I really like to follow, obviously he's a huge person in the space, Willy Woo. He covers on-chain analysis. Just off, stuff he's published on Twitter as well as his newsletter, it's very clear, at least in those shorter timeframes, that Bitcoin is still correlated to traditional markets. Now it's young, it's a nascent space, it's a new protocol. So especially in these last 5 years or these more recent times, on the bigger timeframes, we are starting to see that decoupling. We are starting to see that correlation. The issue is if liquidity dries up in the main traditional market, that usually sucks liquidity up for a lot of markets. In 2008, gold tanked just along with everything else, but it was one of the first to recover as people wanted a safe place to put their money. So we'll see.
Yeah, as far as that correlation, that's the thing. I think a lot. Let's talk about Bitcoin specifically. I think a lot of people like to think of Bitcoin as a hedge against stuff like that. Then the rest of the world and some of the bigger whales see it as still like a risk asset. And I think eventually it won't be seen as that. It will be seen more like a hedge. But at the moment, a lot of people who own a lot of Bitcoin see it as a risk asset, and it's just proper money management that when things start going down and they sell. I don't pretend to understand all of it, but I hope to reach a place where eventually Bitcoin is less correlated.
Do you guys, are there certain things, like for myself, I genuinely believe as we continue to offer more ETFs in the public markets, we actually are further correlating Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I would say that I think you're right on, but it's almost, if you want mass adoption, this sort of thing is inevitable. The important thing is for Bitcoin specifically, keep the main chain, keep the main protocol as decentralized, as verifiable, as censorship resistant as possible. And like it or not, all those products will be built on an asset that has legs and people are interested in.
Yeah, overall, I mean, there are obviously like disadvantages or things that you would look at and be like, oh, this isn't that cool. But like overall, I think those financial products being offered, combined with the regulation that we've been seeing over the past few years, is ultimately long-term bullish. Because I'm sure you guys remember, there was a point years ago where people didn't know how the US government or the Canadian government would look at Bitcoin, let alone cryptocurrency. And the safest thing to do was, make the chain just prepare, just try and get as as distributed and decentralized and censorship resistant as possible, so that if governments had a problem with it, we'd be able to still survive. Now, the fact that they are making financial products, ultimately, I think that, I look at the positive. They're regulating it. That means they're not banning it. That means game on.
I love it. Well, I think we're coming down maybe to the last few minutes here, so maybe we should do a round of closing questions and or remarks. Q.
Sure. Also, just wanted to remind everyone on Twitter, if you wanted to see our faces and actually put faces to the names of Altcoin Daily, hop over to the YouTube channel so you can see what these guys actually look like. My final, I guess, question for the two of you: how much weight is market cap of each individual token you guys consider and discuss factored into your research? I sometimes, unfortunately, I fell trap and victim to ignoring market cap for some time. And I think, unfortunately, most of the broader market just does, and we don't factor that into our analysis.
I would say that market cap has to be taken into everything in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has the largest market cap by far, but in the traditional finance space, Bitcoin has a small market cap. Then you get into crypto, it has the bigger one, and these altcoins have extremely small market caps. And that just is part of the reason they're incredibly risky. And obviously, the top 10 or top 20 have higher market caps than something on page 2 of coin market cap. So it's if you're not considering market cap, you're effing up.
And to add on to that, I would say that another big thing I look for is teams and the actual people behind it. Even if it's just the name brand, hey, this guy used to be a co-founder of Ethereum, Gavin Wood, now on Polkadot. Those things have meaning to me. And by the way, totally opposite of what gives Bitcoin value in terms of there is no leader. There is no guy that's still around that can answer questions in Congress. But for these altcoins, and that is a lot of credibility in my mind that these guys have been in the space and they are credible to other notable people following this space.
Well, listen, guys, I think we found some great points that we agree on, and it's only fitting if we close it out. And I just, disagree with a few. I think the market cap, for the purposes of me as a Bitcoin holder, couldn't care less. I am interested in Bitcoin on Bitcoin's terms. I denominate my time in Bitcoin. I think accumulating Bitcoin and learning as much as possible about it is the way to go. And yeah, I don't want to leave my property or my assets in the hands of others. I don't want to leave it up to trust. Trust don't verify is a way of life, man. So listen, I really appreciate talking to both of you. This has been pretty fun. Is there any last Q? Did you get your last words in for this stream?
Sure. I mean, look, I am the token, not maximalist. So a lot of what you guys said does resonate with me. I also still do believe Bitcoin is the soundest money there is. It is the best investment you could be making for yourself, your family, and your future. But we will have to continue this conversation another time. This was very fun. I definitely learned a lot. I hope everyone listening and tuning in did as well. And make sure, again, if you want to meet at any of us in person, we will all be in Miami. Make sure you buy your tickets to the conference. Use code YTMAG to get 10% off.
Yeah, guys, and I would say, the whole point of this discussion is, go follow Aaron and Austin and go listen to what they have to say. I think it's silly, even if you're a Bitcoin only person, I'm Bitcoin only. It's silly to put on blinders. Like, go explore, go try out other platforms, go see what works. I'm going to get flamed for this later, but it's like, you really don't know unless you're going to, go put on a couple different hats and have some experiences so that you can learn and develop your own stance. And yeah, I wish everybody the best and happy Bitcoin accumulating. I hope we can all agree on that. I hope you do decide to spend a little bit of fiat or Bitcoin on some B2022 tickets. Promo code YTMAG for 10% off. Yeah, and also I think we're good to close up the spaces. And yeah, guys, I hope you
thank you so much for having us on. Huge fans of Bitcoin Magazine and huge fans of the critical yet reasonable take that you approach to Bitcoin versus the rest of the market. Huge fan of the content you do, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Huge fan of Bitcoin Magazine, the actual magazine, and the YouTube channel. Happy to collab again. I encourage anybody from our audience, go on and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Great daily content. Anybody from Bitcoin Magazine, feel free to check us out. And the best thing we can all do is just continue to learn and find common ground and see if just the more we understand, the better it'll be. And hodl Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Love it. Aaron, Austin, thank you guys. Chris, do we want to play some B2022 ads? We should probably first drop some Bitcoin for people who have been listening quietly at home. So we can throw some Bitcoin, a QR code on screen for the Earn Carrot app, drop some codes, get you guys some Bitcoin 2022 tickets. Are you guys going to be there, Austin, Aaron? Awesome.
Yep, we are media partners. We'll be there the full weekend.
Perfect.
Yes.
Love to hear it. I can't wait to meet you guys in person.
By the way, you can also use for 10% off Altcoin Daily, one word, just like individual Satoshis. They do the exact same thing. There's really no difference, but that's another 10% off.
There you go. Great. So I think we dropped some Bitcoin just now, Chris. We're ready for that commercial break. And with that, we'll end it today. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Let me check the schedule. Q, who do we have on tomorrow? Got some big show lined up.
Tomorrow
We've got Dr. Jeff Ross.
Excited for that conversation. If you
Yeah,
guys
that's
didn't,
gonna be awesome.
if you guys didn't, he had an awesome interview on Preston Pish's podcast. I mean, the man is doctor turned Bitcoiner. It further cements this idea that all of us come from different backgrounds, had different career and life experiences, but it all led us to the same place. So I'm excited for that one.
Psyched. I've